have it? Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. This is the November 13th meeting of the City of Revere City Council's Subcommittee of Zoning for Billboards. So over the past week since our last, or several weeks since our last meeting, the city solicitor as well as the city planner helped us draft our first draft to address this issue. And this meeting is to discuss some comments, questions, concerns, and recommendations on the first draft of this ordinance. So at this time, we'll start with Ron, if you want to introduce some of your questions and recommendations.
Oh, sorry. My name is Ron Champeau from the Revere Beautification Committee, and beside me is Carol Haney, also from the Revere Beautification Committee. So we did review, we spent a good portion of the weekend reviewing the draft, and we want to compliment you on writing this. We have some questions, of course, and some thoughts and ideas that we'd like to, that we believe would enhance this ordinance. So the first question we have is, what constitutes the, do we have copies?
Yeah,
We could
I'm gonna
pass.
pass
Yeah.
copies. I had some made.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Carol.
All right.
Because I was gonna write it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. As they're being passed around,
I just have a TD Bake one. You want that one?
the first question, as you can read, what constitutes the difference between a digital sign and a digital billboard? Is it the dimensions, or is it fixed or standing issue?
Good
Legally.
question. There is no legal, we create these definitions. Digital sign is basically anything that's not a digital billboard. A billboard, we understand to be a very large, like I put a definition of a billboard in, so anything that's not that would be a digital sign. So a sign you see on the side of a business saying, "Eat at Joe's," and it changes colors, that would be a digital sign.
Okay.
Digital billboard would be the same thing that says "Eat at Joe's," but it would be on a big structure, it would be much larger in dimensions.
Right, and as you say, it's regulated by the Mass Department.
That's regulated by
Right,
those
correct.
guys, right?
Okay,
And it's not versus fixed versus standing, it's both. A standing one or one on a building, so it's both of them.
Correct, as far as a billboard is concerned, that's correct. And again, this is a draft, so these are good comments, because
Right.
Frank and I are probably going to still be ironing out some more of the details here.
Yeah,
Okay. In section 3, if you could refer to that in your draft, we noticed right off the bat that the RB zone is not mentioned. We didn't, residential business zone was missing. You have
It's just
everything
another
else
set. I
other
got
than that.
RB1,
Yeah.
yeah,
so-
I'm going to add RB as well.
Right. Also, ORODA, ORODB, ORODC,
I brought that up with
and the
Frank.
Wonderland
Yeah, and he
Transit.
said that those were special zones that were not in the table of uses and that wouldn't apply to them.
Okay, so
and I
all
need to
4
get
of those?
Yep, correct.
Okay, and then same in section 4 and section 7, the RB is there, but the ORODA, B, C, and also the Wonderland Transit Oriented Development Overlay District.
Yeah, those overlay districts are governed differently, so that's why they weren't included. I did ask Frank about that, and he could certainly put it in, because they wouldn't be allowed there either.
Right,
But they're an overlay, so the districts that they overlay, the rule for signs would apply,
okay.
whether it's the TED or wherever they happen to be overlaying.
How are existing signs affected?
They're not. They're not, everything would be grandfathered.
Okay,
So this is really going forward.
okay. Do existing signs in forbidden districts have to be removed? That's somewhat redundant, but,
No, if they've been allowed to go where they are now, they would be protected as a pre-existing non-conforming use. But if you notice, and maybe you didn't, in one of my changes here, I do refer to 1736-100, it says existing non-conforming signs and billboards. It says subject to section 17.40.050. That gives them a certain,
where is that?
1736-100 on page 3.
Okay, yes,
It starts off with subject to section 17.40.050.
yes?
40050 says that if you don't utilize your sign in a certain period of time, I think it's 2 years, then you've lost that protection.
So that, for example, the one that was decaying on Broadway, if they didn't put anything in after 2 years, they would lose the sign.
Yeah, if that, well, not, yes, if that decay part shows a lack of use, or they don't put any signs up there, it goes up without any advertisements, then yeah, they would lose their protective status. That's correct.
Who regulates that or oversees that?
Well, it would be the building department, specifically the building inspector enforces the zoning provisions of our ordinances.
Well, what if there was an attempt to lease it, like if there was a for rent sign on it and they just couldn't get it rented within 2 years? Would that be in violation?
Possibly. It would be determination on whether actually renting it or leasing it constitutes use. If it doesn't, then yes, they would lose their protected status as well. But those are specific details, which I don't have every specific answer, and I apologize for not being so exacting. But those are all good questions, which we would look at the time when it comes up. So like we do with current zoning, you know, we give variances, we give special permits. If a person doesn't use it after 2 years, has it lapsed? And they say, well, I was about to use it, or I started to put in the foundation. So all those specific circumstances, the particular circumstance, will dictate at the time.
The next, excuse me, the fifth question. Can a billboard be changed from common to digital automatically? What does otherwise permitted mean in section 36-120?
Well, because it's called digital sign, their digital signs would be allowed in 2 districts, not in the rest. Digital billboards would never be allowed to be converted. So that's what it means.
Say that to me again,
So
please.
section 1736120 you're referring to?
Yes.
All right. Converting static billboard or sign to a digital billboard or sign. There's a difference between a sign and a billboard.
Yes.
Digital signs will be allowed in 2 districts, TED and HB. No place else. So if you happen to have a sign, TED and HB, that's static and you want to convert it to digital, you'd be able to apply for a special permit for that.
That's a sign.
Sign, not a
Right.
billboard. That's why it refers to billboard and sign in 2 different definitions. We created a definition for billboard. Before, we had somewhat of a definition. It was called a standing sign. It wasn't quite clear what that meant. And then in other parts of the ordinances, it would refer to it as billboard, but we never actually defined what a billboard is. What I tried to do, and what Frank and I both tried to do, there's Title 17, which is your zoning, zoning. And within Title 17, you had 3 chapters that related to billboards. 08 was definitions. 1.6 is the use regulations. Where can you have them, where can't you have them? And then 3.6 was specifically about signage. What can you have with a sign, what can't you have with a sign? Then we had Title 15, Chapter 1508, which was all about billboards. Well, they didn't call them billboards, they called them standing signs. Since we're eliminating billboards for the future, that section had only 4 chapters in it anyways, 3 of which pertain to billboards. The 4th chapter was about posting without consent. So I took the posting without consent, took it out of Chapter 1508, and just put it in Title 17, Chapter 17.36. And I hate the way we have all these things now, but it's so confusing.
Yeah.
The first part of his question was, can a billboard be changed from common to digital automatically?
No.
Yeah, and the answer would be no, because they come before the council for that permission.
Plus,
So it's the state council that has to give
but we're also passing, what I also wrote in here was 17.36120, converting static billboard or sign to digital billboard or sign. I said, the language we have in here is you can't do that. It's not allowed. We're not even giving it the option. You maybe you guys want to have the option.
Good. There is no
To allow by
chance.
special permit.
It's
Right
only
now,
allowed in 2 districts, right? TED and
Digital
HB.
signs, not
Digital
billboards.
signs, correct.
Not
So
billboards.
digital billboards and
Cannot be
static
converted.
billboards static billboards
Cannot be
that
converted
exist today cannot be converted to digital billboards
going forward.
anywhere.
Without special permission from the city council, as we've done in the
No.
past.
That's
No.
not what it says now.
No.
But I can put
But
that
that's
in.
what
we
we've
can
done
leave
in the
that
past, that's the way they
Right.
honored, that's the way they
Right.
proceeded with it.
But- Right. I think there's, our thoughts as we read this, and we've been thinking about this for quite a period of time, that can create a lot of problems. If you limited it to a specific area, as I spoke the last time, say the HD, is that what it's called?
B.
HB in the TED district. The problem is, you've got approximately 22, I think it's close to 22 billboards that could possibly be converted to digital. So I think it's creating a problem. It'll create a problem for the city council. I mean, that's an enormous amount of billboards. You already have 7 approved in the city. You have
This
4.
would be 22 in addition to the 7?
I think four, you would, on Lee Burbank Highway, you would take 4 off, so it would be 18. Because you've got the one at Suffolk Downs, at the station, Wonderland Station, that's the on MBTA property. You get the one on, Revere Beach Parkway. No, Route 1.
Right.
Right there at where that church is, Eagle Church, the 2 there. And then you've got the 4 that were approved by the city council on Lee Burbank Highway. So you'd have to deduct the 4 on Lee Burbank. But at least places like, we have to be very, very careful from what I've been looking at. And this is why, our thought is that anytime, if you did do something like that, you really have to be careful. Because I noticed what you said, 100 feet from the highway. I couldn't measure. I was going to walk the 100 feet from the walkway.
Well, I think that's where we have to put language into the ordinance to tell us.
Yeah, well, it is in there, the 100 feet, but there's an example like Brown Circle, which caused a lot of activity with this council, is that, because it is in one of the zones that I had mentioned earlier, but that's, I think it's time to really grow up and say, no, that's it. We're not going down this road at all. We're just gonna eliminate them.
So the process is this. We have a sitting council right now that's pretty much against any new or additional and any change.
Right.
But what's to prevent that's why we have to put language in this particular ordinance for future council to have a direction. And so this is the course of action we must take. This is the city ordinance. Do we change it or do we stay with it? That's their option up the road. But at least if we put the language in there now, there'll be a guideline. There'll be a path so we can follow.
Right, I think, I think the solicitor, what you said, this would be the guideline. The guideline would be, there are no more billboards can be built in the city of Revere. There will be no
So that's a
more.
prohibition. I'm talking
That's
about the
prohibition.
existing use.
Right,
Start with the existing
and the
ones.
existing billboards, the static billboards that exist now cannot be changed to digital billboards.
No one mentioned that at the last meeting, I
Yeah.
threw that in
Yeah.
there. If that language
But-
is not agreed upon, you'd like to modify it, it's gonna all be modified.
What
I
do you
went with
think
the
would
strongest
take the
language.
test of court? Say we were tested in a court of law. What would be, this is what I think our group was, we're trying to determine, put language in this particular ordinance that will give us enough of an ability to defend our actions in a court of law.
I think the actions can be defended, you never know what a court's going to do. We do have the police powers to regulate our signing. You notice I put in 173601, what's the purpose of all this billboard ordinance? Is to protect the public, to keep it aesthetically pleasing, to be able to do equal enforcement of this chapter. So I think we have a position to say that we can't, we can prohibit the conversion. Now, what a judge will argue on that, who the heck knows what the other side will argue, kind of guarantee that we'll win, no. But right now, I feel that we have the authority to say that if that's what we want to do. If you want to leave it open in the highway district or something, I can modify that to SPH.
Well, I think we have the strongest case in the world stating that we have the most billboards in the state of Massachusetts. That in itself gives us leverage to say, okay, we've been more than fair to this industry. Now it's justice to our residents that we.
Yeah, if the
put
feeling
restrictions
among
on
the
them.
public and the feeling among your constituents and the feeling among the beautification committee is these digital billboards are loud, shiny, distracting.
Yeah.
I think that's well within our authority to say we prefer that not be the case for the general public good and for the general aesthetics of the city. I think we
Yeah, I
can say
think-
that. If I'm wrong, you'll tell me.
These are all good questions, by the way.
Yeah,
It's a valid question.
Yeah, but I think if something like that did happen, because that would be my fear too. I think we would be then available, able to address that.
Defend the action.
And then go back and say, maybe then you could revert it.
And we have some digital signs now, so it's not like
Yes.
we've
And there's
always.
7.
So I
7
think we're in a
approved.
good position.
I just got a question.
Yep.
You're against the digital
Yes.
billboard?
No,
No, I just want to.
yeah, it's not a matter of being against, but it's a matter of numerics. I mean, what's the limit? We've gone overboard with,
Oh, I think
with-
we all agree that
right,
we're not going to do any new ones.
Right.
I kind of have the feeling, some of these old ones that aren't really kept up, if they come in and they want to make it a digital. I actually prefer the digital over the old type because, I've had
things that has to be addressed too, the maintenance issue. And the fining or whatever else may be.
Which I put that in the last section.
Right, that was one of our questions. Right.
Should we go back to the questions and we pick up on number 6?
Okay, but I think to address your point, it's like a ping ball machine. After all, how many billboards can we have in the city? Because realistically, this city has gone down a bad road, and that's how we got ourselves to 62. We've got 7 now, and my concern is that if you start putting one over there on Astor Ave, and then you're not there, of course, but I mean, one over, God, no, we're not. We don't want you on your deck looking out and seeing it. No, but I'm just saying, there's, this is not the way that the future,
I'm
this is,
not strongly against any additional
Yeah.
billboards. I just talking about the old ones
Yeah.
that are up, that people own now,
Yeah.
that are grandfathered in.
Mhm.
If they want to change to digital, I would prefer that than
Yeah.
have them keep it. And I just get one over there. How do
Yeah.
you feel about that?
well, I can just tell you from reading and understanding what the effects are of billboards, static or digital. I mean, who benefits the greater? The person who benefits the greater is not the individual who lives near the billboard, who has to pass by that billboard. Your economic loss from having a billboard, digital or static, is horrendous. I mean, there's that study, I passed out that study. That's a viable and important study, and I think we have to pay attention to it. The issue is more than, I think you're talking about whether, you're like a paper product or something that's moving, with colors and things like that. I don't see the great benefit to the city, the changing of it.
Economically, we could work out a better deal in return. If they want to change to digital.
I think didn't the city of Peabody, I know you talked to the city, didn't they have some issues around that, the permitting fees?
It's not in their ordinances. I looked today again to double check. They have 2 sections. I didn't see it. I saw it mentioned in news articles that they
Right.
will be charging an annual fee of $15,000, $20,000, or $25,000 depending. But I think that was the result of a legal settlement.
Right.
They've been going to court a lot with these companies. These companies have been taking the city. And I think what's PB ultimately done, if I understood it, was say, okay, we'll give up the suit in exchange for which you guys will agree to pay this. But those numbers are not in their ordinances.
Right.
Fees have to be reasonable and proportional to something. And right now, we don't charge any fees at all for billboards, we never have.
Right.
So now all of a sudden to say we're passing a law that says if you want to keep a
Right.
billboard, it's $50,000 a year, they'll take us to court and probably win on
Let me
music.
ask you a question. So do they have to come, like every 2 years and pull out a permit for their, so that's maybe something we can put on here that says that, the existing billboards has to refile a permit.
They do with the state, and then we would have to have some reason for this fee that would sort of separate the need for this thing. So right now, we're requiring that what we're proposing is they get annual inspections from an independent state investigator, independent approved state engineer or whatever that has you to that inspects billboards, and then turn that over to the building inspector. I suppose, and I have to look more into it, we could charge a fee for that, for having to do it, but we're asking them to go out and get an independent inspector to go do that and send it. But right now, we've never given licenses or permits for billboards, other than
What I'm
special
saying
permits
is,
pulling up.
what I'm saying is, so if you give the billboards 4 years for a permit, and they don't renew it, then shut them down.
I
That's
think
what,
there's one of the ordinance right now, it's like $25. like,
okay.
for
But I
putting up a
mean,
sign.
maybe we should have a limit on, how many years they can have a permit for the billboard, because they are
I see what you're
they're using our land, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you say, okay, 4 years we'll have a permit, and if they don't renew the permit, then it's just like a house, if the house is abandoned and they don't pay what they're supposed to pay, eventually the house becomes the city. So, the city's, it's owned by the city,
You
so
would like an annual, some sort of permit licensing fee.
Michael,
Or like a renewal application where you
Yeah,
can check
something
the
like
structural
every 4
integrity
years.
of it.
and if they don't,
Well,
if
we
they,
have, we put that
Yeah,
in there
'cause you
right
put that
now.
yearly.
They have to give a yearly, and then
Yeah.
if he didn't, if it didn't pass muster, then we're also put in here the ability to fine them for having a dilapidated or a rundown or a structurally unsound billboard. Because we
Right.
don't want those sitting around the city falling apart.
but if, say you do a timeline for
But just to be
like,
clear, they can do that now. I just think that the inspectional services and the Safe Housing Task Force have been focused on buildings, homes, and not billboards. We have the ability now to go down to a property, and if it's overrun with weeds or looks messy, we can fine the owner. Now, if the billboard company is leasing from the owner, the fine will go to the owner, not to Clear Channel or whatever company may be leasing it. So we have the ability to do that now. I basically regurgitated a lot of that in that one little section and tried to make it a little stronger for general aesthetic appearances, because a billboard could be structurally sound, but still look like crap if it's, the sign's not up or it's peeling, but it can still be structurally sound, and the land can be maintained, but the billboard could still look lousy. So I try to strengthen that to say, well, even if it looks lousy, it's blight on the city. We're not gonna allow that under the building code, therefore we're gonna fine you for that. So we have the ability to do that now. I just think the inspectional services has not been focused on billboard properties.
right,
Will be now.
I think that's the city council administration, the mayor and administration's responsibility to make an awareness of the department heads.
Certainly.
This is a concern of our residents, and
Can we send the
focus on
building
it.
department up there to go, just like you do with other
Yeah.
things?
Periodically,
Just like we do with Wonderland.
take a check, like put it in your notebook, every couple of months, check billboards, you know?
And we have to decide on the penalties, too.
Yes,
Well, right now, under the health code, if it violates some of the health code provisions of tall grass, things of that nature, we have a special act that allow us to put fines on it and lien it. And if it comes out, if it's structurally, if it's dangerous, you wanna make it go into a 40U, at least that was my plan. And then you could fine them daily up to $500 a day. Again, that goes against the property owner. That's how we find properties now, the tree building or not the company that may be leasing it and paying for the advertisement.
Is it a public hearing?
this is just a meeting.
But is it a public hearing part of the
Yes.
meeting?
But it will go to a public hearing once an ordinance is established, but this is a
So
open
it's an
meeting
open meeting, okay.
establishing.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? From when John Jordan was on this council, when the digital billboard started, he was proposing to give a revenue share, back to the city from the billboard company. So for example, if they have a digital billboard, that makes a lot more money, so the city would make a lot more money on it by permitting, by having them do a permit. So that's one way to decrease billboards, because if they're gonna have to pay the city as part of their revenue share, they're gonna not wanna put them in.
That's a
Now,
great point.
if I'm sitting here right, there's only gonna be 2 zones
Paying
for digital billboards.
Right.
So
No,
this is
there will
the,
not be, no,
If I,
there'll be no zones.
Billboards.
so
for
this is
digital
a,
billboards, you didn't say that there was gonna be a high, two zones,
Digital sign.
digital signs.
so this is
Makes sense.
this is a working committee meeting, Mr. Tucker, so we have not established an ordinance yet. This is an open, all meetings are public meetings in the city, so we're working to establish what the preliminary ordinance could be. After the working meeting's established, then whatever we draft up that is, gone through all the loops and questions, this is, our second meeting of several. It will go to the council as an ordinance, and then it will go through the public hearing process and all the open public meetings, questions, comments, concerns, things. But all meetings are public that are held in City Hall and for the council. So it's an open meeting, but it's still a working meeting. So it's still things that we're ironing out the kinks and going through it. So this is the first draft that we as a committee have seen before it's got to that point.
Okay, so digital billboards are gonna be not allowed at all. If you're being proposed, you're proposing that they wouldn't be allowed at all.
Yes.
In no zone.
we're not gonna allow any more billboards to come into the city, that's what that's
Totally.
totally, yes.
And the digital billboards, we're not gonna allow static billboards to be changed to digital billboards.
But that would be a good point.
But if you,
mentioned,
the whole idea was,
revenue share.
for the digital
If they
billboards,
changed
was
the-
if you'd be taking away maybe 3 or 4 of the static billboards to allow them to put one digital billboard.
then you would have to, on section 13, 1736-120, you could then put in for every one existing static billboard, change to a digital, 2 existing static billboards have to be removed. Billboards to be removed are at the discretion of the city council, if you did something like that. But then it would be, this is why we have to be succinct if you are going to allow it in 1 or 2 of the districts. It's very, I mean, there's footage, it has to be so many feet away from the other one, and I think.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Now, the static signage, the digital signage, would that be like that's on Mario's?
Yeah, that's a digital sign.
Okay, so that you're allowing by special permit?
In the HB and TED district.
And that
Only.
digital sign is only for that vendor?
That's
So
correct.
It cannot be used for advertising for anywhere else, like that?
That's one of the questions.
That's one of the questions we have, yeah.
Well, I've been dealing with the outdoor advertising board for 2 things, because of course, being on the Board of Appeals, we used to do the approval of the digital signage, because we did the one on the audio place across from Northgate. And he was actually selling space on that. And I went to the outdoor advertisements, and they stopped it because that would be effectively a billboard.
That's exactly right.
And you can't do that legally.
And that's
The
what's in
one
that.
at Wonderland, the one at Wonderland Marketplace.
Yes.
They constantly try to sneak out advertising in there.
And that's in this language, so what we did was we're going through the first draft of it with some questions the committee came up with to see what we're cross-checking and making sure everything is in there, but,
I can give you a copy of our questions too, if you want it afterwards. Or, yeah, we get it. Good. Yeah.
but now we're down to.
Could we get, how about, yeah, I know. We, number 6 is redundant, I think. Is there a limit? Okay, redundant. Does the, okay, how about this, number 8? Does the time constraints cited in section 1738-035 apply to individual businesses only?
As opposed to what?
Does,
Because only businesses have these signs.
right, are we exact?
I mean,
Is
unless
that
someone's gonna put up
exactly
an
true?
announcement for counselor lives and digitalize and stick it on the side of the house, there's a free speech issue.
Right, but I mean, in the case of, I think it was Mario's, they were advertising like, with.
Right, but that, no, that's acting as a billboard, so that wouldn't be allowed.
Okay, so a
That
sign
would
like
be a
that.
digital billboard in effect. Now, if
Okay.
Mario's been doing that and has been allowed to do that, the question could arise if he's not protected to continue to do that.
Right.
But if any other business wanted to put up a sign such as that, they'd only be allowed in those 2 zones after the city council gives them a special permit to do so. And that would be restricted to the business for which the sign is attached to.
Okay, okay. We'll pass on the delineate, we've already done that. There's a misspelling in 1736-110. It's a very simple thing to correct.
Thank you.
It is pain.
The, Steve, you had brought up the issue about,
Penalties.
penalties, right.
And
existing
I didn't
penalties.
restate that, which is already in the ordinance, so if you, the way I wrote that, enforcement provision, which is on the last page,
Chapter 1.12.
it says, see chapter, it says refers to chapter 1.12 and 1.16.
Right, right. I couldn't find that. Yeah,
That's because it's not in the ordinance. It's-
Okay.
If you go to the city clerk's website, it's one of the more recent ones that hasn't been yet put into the existing
Right, it's
ordinance.
okay.
So
So
it's
it's
there on the
online
website,
rather
It's if you look for it, yeah, sorry,
so
that's,
can you tell us what would the penalties
I
be?
think the maximum allowed, if it was under 40U, would be, I think they said 500 a day, 499 a day, or something like that, per
But-
day per violation.
Right, but is there a period where a 7-day period where they have to, you have to notify them?
Yeah, there is a process by which you say, hey, this is a violation, please do this. And the way we're doing safe housing task force right now on a lot of our problem properties. And after several notices, if they don't do it, we start to fine them. If they don't pay the fines, the beauty of using this enforcement mechanism is it goes on their tax bill.
Okay,
So they don't get away without paying it.
okay. If we could move on from one of these questions here, the issue, Steve had brought this up earlier, note 1736-035, the illumination aspect of
Yeah, I
digital
put that
signs.
in there. I think Reading
Yeah.
did it that way. I didn't know what the feeling was of this, of the subcommittee, and what the feeling of the councils will be for their constituents. Those things are bright, they can be, I use the word loud. I think this town of Reading said they don't allow illumination between 11 PM and sunrise. For digital signs, obviously if a
Right.
gas station's open all night, you don't allow that to be lit up.
Right.
But for the digital signs that do flash or whatever ones are allowed,
Right.
you know, that's your.
I think that's it, yeah.
I was gonna say, the thing we can do if it's within so many feet of a residential property, because for example, like that,
Well, it has to be within 300 feet by special, by what we're putting in of any residences and parklands, and at least 100 feet from a public way.
cause like that sound vision meeting one, it's
That's right next to it.
across from the
Yeah,
house.
that one's
So
good.
those are the things we wanna prevent from happening, so maybe it's within.
But now, when they go for a special permit, you'll be able to ask that and say, okay, at least 100 feet, oh, I'm 100 feet, I'm still 300 feet, but it's still shining on a bunch of neighbors. They come up and say, we don't like it, we think it's too bright, you guys would deny the special permit or put in as a condition. We'll give you the digital sign, but you have to shut it off at 11 PM and you can't put it back on until.
So this is excellent. I've noted when I'm reading through other cities and towns, you know, when you read the codes, some cities, when you shut that door, you go out of that business, all the lights have to go off, illumination have to go off.
I mean, we don't
But
do
this
that
is something
now.
that's
Northgate
reasonable.
stays lit all
Right.
night, you
Yeah.
know, the signs. We
Right.
don't expect the place to go
Right.
dark. But
Right,
with digital, I
right.
felt it was sort of a
Right.
different animal, it's sort of
Right.
new. They can be a little more distracting.
Especially with the LED lights too, I don't think
Yeah.
it's
Right,
as
they're
concerning if
killers.
it's like a gas station lit sign than an LED.
I did exclude the signs for the price of gas. I just thought I should throw it in there on
Yeah, I
the
agree.
government's.
Well,
Yeah.
it's 24 hours, you can't,
It's
you
in-
know.
Well, but also it's digital if they wanna put.
And I think years back, in terms of Northgate, we always, as a council, maintained that they should keep it well lit.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
that was
agree.
a- that
I don't
was
think
a
you should shut the
mandate
city should go
of
dark.
the citizens,
No,
they
not at
wanted,
all.
they wanted that to be, well
I
lit.
think that's fine, it's just, but like that vision that place on Squire Road, like
Sound and vision.
Mario's,
Right.
those type of brighter, newer, we're not used to seeing. If it's pointing towards someone's yard at home, I know I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, and think about something, if it's on a highway or not near anyone's home, I don't see it as being as much of a problem. It's,
Yep.
the concern to me is if it's trying
In
to
a
get in your
residential
window at 10 o'clock at night, that's an issue.
Yeah.
And I think Rod did a phenomenal job.
Mario's,
They're-
yeah, digital.
I'm still gonna work on this with Frank. We'll,
Incredibly organized, so thank you guys so much for.
Right on the building.
Welcome.
we'll get you another
What kind of
draft,
billboard?
we'll try to tighten it up. I know it's confusing because I just took the parts of the ordinances, even though other parts of the ordinance apply, I just got the certain sections for this. So I know it's not easy to follow.
But at least we're gonna start.
We have a start.
All right.
So
I think
should we schedule our next meeting?
soon, tomorrow.
What if we do?
So there's only so many council meetings
meeting.
left, right, the rest of this year?
I think about four or five.
I think it's two, December 4th and December 18th.
November 27th.
Yeah, we have a meeting in November.
November 27th? Oh, wow.
We have public hearings here.
Okay, so there would be three, November 27th, December 4th,
And the 18th.
December 18th.
Yeah, I should check it, then you'd have to.
There's one on the 27th of the
Oh,
fourth.
good, so we have
Because this is
three.
zoning, I don't know if this has to
So
go
there's
to the
actually a
planning board
possibility
and
that we
get
could solve this.
advertised, so this is
Yeah,
a little
November
bit more.
Yeah, because if we don't act
Well,
upon
before
it,
the
it's
end of the
signed down.
year.
It's gotta be acted upon this year.
Yeah, but this would have to, because it's a zoning, doesn't this have to go to, the planning board or something for all zoning?
I'm
They have to
wondering if
approve
we
it?
can get some sort of waiver on this, because there's time commitment here. And it's signed down is December
But even if it
31st.
dies, you.
And the last meeting is
Take up the
December
exact
18th.
same thing again after
January,
January.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
this is- Yeah, it's all the same members except for one guy, right?
So if you guys wanted to, before the meeting of 27th, the only thing is this room will be at is 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, there are subcommittees that start at 4 on that day.
Well, what about December 4th?
Well, that would be too close.
But
We
even,
usually do
even,
it 4/27.
I mean, nothing's gonna, you can do something if you so choose, or do nothing. If we come back in January, we're gonna pick up right where we left
Yeah,
off.
That's right.
At
It's
least
not
we'll,
like this
at
goes
least we'll
away.
make some progress.
Right.
And we can always pick up in the new year.
I think that's fine.
Because I know it's getting close, and there's
So-
other issues, you guys, that are probably more important before the year ends. that you
Yeah,
wanna
I
get
kind of
to.
think we'll be
Gonna be
cramming a
around
lot,
December
because of the
20.
18th, we're gonna have dedications and everything that night.
Yeah.
So I think that I would
I didn't
say
think
wait
this was
for the
gonna get done
18th.
by the end of the year.
So I
because it
think
just
that
got
the
too
the
late.
best mindset would be, if we do it right, let's do it, carry it over to the beginning of next year and then go
So-
forward.
So the goal would be on the 4th, you would present something similar to what we were talking about, or,
Well, it would be another
draft-
draft.
another
It would be
draft,
final, Then it's
getting-
signed die, so
And then you kiss carry forward.
right.
it's just an exercise at that point.
I'm gonna get it right. If we're this far into it, let's get it right. And this way here, we have something to work with.
There is stuff on the calendar, I didn't look at it.
Everybody's in agreement that we're gonna do this. I mean, it's the same council.
There's only meeting December 4th.
I think there's one meeting on the 27th, there might be one on the 4th as well.
Sidney Crammond, I don't,
Yeah,
I think we should.
and there's no need to do
take the
that, we're
time.
not, there's no,
No,
no
you're
rush.
thinking of the one that I have next week, before, it's not as packed.
We have one on the fourth, too.
Yes, I do, but the early one is the 27th.
Oh, you do have one.
I do. Alright, the fourth, no, the fourth is just appointments, is at 5:45.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, no, we're on Monday.
Wrong day.
We could do 4 o'clock on the fourth. And there's a subcommittee meeting 4:30.
4 o'clock? 4th of December?
Yeah. And I will let the city clerk know so we can schedule it. This concludes the
You're not gonna like
subcommittee
it, so
on
I'll
billboards.
follow
The next meeting will be on
You're
December
not gonna
4th
like it,
at
so
4
I'll
p.m. in
go.
this council chamber. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. This is the November 13th meeting of the Legislative Affairs Committee. Please all rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have two items on the agenda for tonight, and the first one is an ordinance relative to feeding wild animals, wildlife, and birds. I don't know where this came from, but did it come from? Oh, well then, that's where I was looking to call first, Mr. Patch, Councilor Patch. So let's talk about birds.
Okay, you have the original motion there, Ashley?
The original motion is the ordinance. It's on page 16A, packet page 40. It's on packet page 40.
Do you have a list of the committee
Package page 40? I only goes up to 35.
I don't think I have page 40.
We only go up to 35. Well, like 16A?
Okay, the members of this committee are Councilor Keefe, Councilor Morabito, Councilor Patch, and Councilor Powers, and of course, Councilor Zambuto is the chairman.
Okay,
Councilor Patch.
the purpose of the ordinance change is, as we know, the city's been, has had a big problem with the rat population. And there's nothing in the ordinance that would, I had a complaint of somebody that would daily go out in the driveway and throw a loaf of bread and feed the pigeons, which also creates another problem. But anyways, then you have the rats and the pigeons fighting over the bread. So there was no way. I put my complaint in with the health department, and we saw that in the ordinance there was no penalty for feeding the birds. Now, they can still do, as you see the ordinance, they can have their bird feeder, but they can't actually go out there and throw food on the ground, so they're leaving it for the rats to eat. So that was the purpose of the ordinance. It's just we're trying the best to solve not only my ward. I believe all the ward office councilors are having the same problem. A more consistent complaint of the increase of rat calls. I should say rodent. Probably would be better. I'm just trying. We started with the covers with the way they store their trash. Any little way to increase the food source for the which we know is the main reason you have the rodent problem is I think is better for the city. So that's the purpose of the change of the ordinance. It will fine people if they don't obey the rules and that's basically it. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Any other councilors want to add to this? Councilor Morabito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is, Council Patch, would you be looking to extend this or amend this motion so DCR can control the beach? Because we don't have control over the beach, feeding birds on the beach, technically.
No, unfortunately, we don't, as you probably have constantly got attacked at Kelly's. We don't have the control there. But as far as my ward in West Revere, we can control that if, or at least one area here where this is a problem, feeding the birds. They can feed the birds if they want to get a bird feeder, put it off the ground, put it up and,
I guess my misunderstanding from your comments, I'm not sure if you're looking to implement this citywide. Revere Beach is part of the city, but we do not enforce ordinances on the beach. So I guess my question is, are you going to amend this so we send a letter out to DCR and asking them to enforce it as well?
well, I'd gladly do that. I'd leave it open to the Madam Clerk if is that possible?
It's my understanding that you're already not allowed to feed, wildlife on Revere Beach. It's already
Okay.
enforced.
Okay.
I don't know the specific, regulation that DCR follows for their jurisdiction, but this particular ordinance would apply to City of Revere property and private property within the City of Revere.
Thank you.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with Council Patch. The question comes down to the enforcement portion of it. How does it get enforced? We've got a motion before us tonight. The question comes down to how do we enforce it? And, I'm all for good intentions, and I'll sign on to good intentions. The question is, how do we enforce it? We have a hard time enforcing, people who put up roofs on the weekends and things of that nature. So what can we do to dedicate a group of people to deal with this issue is, I think, the next question. So once we go from this point where we're going to put this as an ordinance, how do we affect the enforcement of it?
Councilor Patch, you want to respond to that?
Yes. What happened with my case was that I put it in a 311 on the person that was feeding the pigeons, when using the bread in his driveway, and they went down. The health department was willing to go down, but they told me they had no way to punish if the person didn't want to apply to the law or the request. There was no way of stopping them. So I wanted to create a way for them to be able to enforce this. Thank
Is
you.
that good enough for you, Councilor Rotundo?
Yeah, that's perfect. The other thing I would ask for is perhaps even education. Maybe send something out via email or some other form of education, both in Spanish and in Arabic, because, these are groups within our community that have a history of enjoying wildlife and so forth, and perhaps this might be something to think about.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've had the same situation even within the last 2 weeks. I had some neighbors down in the Garfield area complain about some renters, and it's not even owners of a home, so that's another issue. We finally decided to send the tenants a letter through the city telling them that it's not appropriate to feed the birds because the reasons because of the rodents, because of the animals that come out, the skunks, the raccoons, and whatever. So, I would like to make when we get down to the final thing under enforcement, which Councilor Rotundo was talking about, that we don't separate the private property from public property, and that we allow inspectional services and animal control to be able to violate either or. So that, if somebody is doing it on the property, the animal control guys can do it, or the inspectional services can do it. If it's on public property, same thing. And now you have two entities handling multiple situations. It's difficult to say, oh, this guy, the animal control person may say, oh, listen, I can't handle that, that's up to someone else. Now we can get either one of them to handle. So my proposal, when we get down to changing the wording on this, to allow inspectional services and the animal control to enforce the provisions of this chapter, and that these violators be issued a 40U, if I'm correct, a 40U citation, so they would get fined for it. Now, another thing is on the fines, it says not less than 25 and not more than, who determines, what the number was going to be? Excuse me. Yeah.
Councilor Novoselsky, those fines were provided to me by Nicholas Catanazzo.
Okay, so,
That's the fine structure under 40U.
so ISD would determine at any point, say if someone did the first time, it would be 25, then maybe 100, then maybe 250, whatever it may be, but they would determine that. So, I think this is a great idea. It gives us a little more meat and to handle a serious problem, because just by feeding the birds isn't a problem like, the rodents and the other animals are. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Councilor Guanasso.
Well, Mr. President, I think this is very valid reasoning for preventing this, based on the fact that bird droppings is very hazardous to health. And I know of many occasions where a particular one on Gage Ave, there was a situation going on where an individual was feeding birds, and it was bringing to the whole neighborhood birds from all over, and squirrels and all kinds of wildlife that really were raising havoc with the neighborhood and destructing people's property along with it. So I think this is a good motion, and I think it's a good ordinance that we pass it forward and approve this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else? Any other councilors? I'll add my 2 cents to this. I'm certainly in favor of it. I think it's a great motion, and I think that we certainly need to do something. My biggest fear is that we don't get an educational package out there that's adequate. I mean, we really have to educate the public. I know that even my own immigrant family, grandparents and whatever, would come over, always fed birds, and I know the new immigrants are doing the same thing. And I don't think we can just flat out start fining people. We got to get an educational program out there. So I don't know what kind of a grace period we're going to put in with this, but I'd like to see something substantial. I'd like to see more than that, a substantial educational piece. TV, Councilor Rotundo mentioned different languages. I think we need to get this to all, especially the immigrant community. And I'm not singling them out, except that they probably are the biggest abusers, because that's something that's been done for years in their culture. So I think that's what we need to do, is get a big piece. And I don't know how we go about that, but we really, maybe it starts at the schools, but schools, TV, literature, in the tax bills, in reverse 911, whatever it takes. But we need to educate the people about this. But I'm certainly in favor of it, and I think it's a great motion, as long as we do it correctly. What do we do here? Yeah, okay, we'll recommend this out favorably from the subcommittee to the city council.
Mr. Chairman, as amended per my recommendations.
As amended.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Powers, I didn't ask you if you wanted, you're all set. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is an ordinance prohibiting non-medical marijuana establishments. And I think Councilor Keefe will probably take the lead on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. this has been a few months coming now, and I know that we started this off, down the road. We were full of fury. I know at least I was, and I was maybe a little bit too outspoken, but as everyone understands my passion behind this, but it's gone through the proper channels. We've had input from our city solicitor, and gone through the open hearing and public process. So I think it's a great step. We're sending the right message to the residents of our city. We're sending the right message to future business in the city, that we're going to take a stance on a certain image-related business in our city, and I'm very happy to get to this point today. And obviously, I'm going to vote very favorably tonight, and I would expect my fellow council members to do the same. And thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors wish to speak on this? Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. As I had asked Paul Capizzi, and obviously, I'd like to get some reference by Ira Zalesnik, excuse me. My concern is that if we put this forward, is there a capability for someone to come forward down the road and sue the city stating that they were not given their 14th Amendment right to commerce? That's a concern for me, therefore basically eradicating this whole thing. So my understanding what could happen is that they would come in, they would say, you gave one person preference, then you took it away, and you denied anybody else thereafter, therefore setting up a monopoly. And that's my concern. Do we fall into a monopoly clause with this? Paul never answered that. That's my only concern. And that would be my only question to Ira, just to keep it in for another week or so, and then, go from there. I mean, well, that's up to you guys.
This is obviously the first step of a two-step process. It would be the ban, and we would have to amend the zoning. We have a public hearing for that in a couple of weeks, I believe, 27th.
I mean, you see my point in this, I think.
Okay, all right, so I suppose we could get that answer and have a meeting next week before the public hearing, if that's not a problem with the maker of the motion.
I'm all in favor of going through the proper channels. I as stated in the time that this has gone through, this wasn't. We have gone through a lot more of detailed steps in getting the right input, and as mentioned, we're following the law as it was written almost to a T. So I feel extremely confident, but I think we could possibly go to the approval process tonight and ask in contingency of any weigh-in from the city solicitor.
Well, I think that I'm pretty comfortable with this as it is, but I don't mind holding it for a week either. It's not. Sure. I don't mind having another meeting a week from now just to make sure we dotted every I and crossed every T.
I'm okay with that as well.
But yeah, I think we're on solid ground. Anybody else? Okay, so we're going to keep this in committee for one more week, and we'll hold a meeting next week. And there's no further business for the Legislative Affairs Committee. So thank you all for your attendance.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Appointment Subcommittee for the meeting of November 13th. We have before us, and I'm going to ask the indulgence of the membership of the City Council, namely the Appointment Subcommittee. We have one particular item on the agenda, and I have
two others that have been asked that we reviewed this evening, and we can vote appropriately this evening afterwards. And it's going to read as follows. First, we're going to have the hearing for 17-238, Dan McGuire, School Committee Member, Special Municipal Employee Disclosure Form. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Dan McGuire, 114 Pearl Ave.
Mr. McGuire, for the edification of those in the audience and for those at home viewing, please outline as brief as possible your request.
It's a request that's required, much like about 2 or 3 months back, there was a school nurse who was employed by the school department who wanted to be a coach, which comes with a stipend. So in order for her to collect the stipend and to collect her nurse pay, she needed a vote of this council. She got that favorably. Back in 2012, I was thinking of retiring and got a special municipal employee to be a 911 call taker. This is basically the same animal. I'm a current school committee member. A job came up in security at Seacoast, and I'd like to say that salary is $25,000 a year to work 7:30 to 3 the calendar year at Seacoast High School. The issue with the ethics is you can hold the job and you can collect both school committee pay and security as long as the council votes it, and if not, I would have to recuse myself from any further meetings. I really just want to finish my term as a school committee member. I've given 13 years to that body. It's a small amount of money that will go towards my daughter Megan's college fund. I enjoyed myself on that committee, but if anyone has any questions about the way it works, I'm here.
What kind of money are we talking?
It's 3 months' pay for the school committee is $500 for stipend, and the expense account of $500. So it's $3,000 you're talking about.
Okay, let me first introduce members of the, as we have the city council as a whole, but first let me introduce members of the subcommittee. Councilor Giannino, Councilor McKenna, Councilor Morabito, and Councilor Patch. I will take inquiries from the membership of the city, the appointment subcommittee, and then any councilors are wishing to come in thereafter. Any members of the subcommittee wishing to speak? Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Danny, we've been friends for a long time, but I'll tell you, when I was a school teacher and I got elected to be an elected official, I couldn't take 2 checks. I had to give up one of them. So I worked as a counselor for 2 months without pay.
Right.
When I became a counselor then, and I retired from school teaching, then I got my counseling degree, my counseling paycheck. And then just recently, the senior center wanted me to teach watercolors to the seniors. And I went to the Ethics Commission because, and they told me I couldn't take 2 paychecks in Revere, that it was against the, it's against
Well,
what.
they told me something different, and it needed a vote of the council, so I'm back here. Listen, I totally understand if you vote against the stipend, but I would just consider it because I like to finish the term. But it's totally legal. It's not something that, I don't know, your case was different. The case with the nurse, and it's the same department.
When did you start this job at
September.
Seacoast? Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks,
Council
Danny.
Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan, if you continue as a school committee person, you don't have to give up. You just don't have to give up the salary. You don't have to give up the job.
That's not what I was told by ethics. Was it needs a vote of the council, a yes or a no. A no.
Well, I can't see that because you've been doing it.
Maybe the city clerk can help up with that, but.
Do you have a ruling on that, Madam Clerk? Do you have any knowledge of, other people have done it, have worked with no
I
salary.
wouldn't be able to comment on that, Counselor. That would either be a question for the city solicitor, Paul Capizzi, or the Ethics Commission.
He's not here now.
you know, I really, you put us in a predicament here. I mean, I've been getting calls. One person that made very little money as a cafeteria worker wanted to be a crossing guard. She would cross the guard, and she'd work as she was actually doing it. She was working in the morning, going to be a cafeteria worker, and work crossing guard in the afternoon. The scheduling worked, but the school department told them that no, you can't have two paychecks. They made her stop being a crossing guard. I don't know if this is factually true, but I've heard it from several people. And you know, I could really, you know, this is hard because you're a friend of mine, and ethically though.
Well, that's why I went to the State Ethics Commission. Ethically, it's been passed in the past. It's been done. Some situations are different. I'm just called the State Ethics and doing basically what they said. You need to get a vote, a yes or a no. They can't table this motion. And if you vote no, I still like it. It doesn't affect me. It just, my daughter's college fund will be less.
It just that, like Councilor McKenna said, there are some incidents where I know for a fact that they, you know, wanted to be a coach or something, that they were prevented from doing it, like people that, a fireman or a policeman. It's just that it really, I could see if there was a real financial problem, I could see voting for it, voting for somebody that had to have it.
Again, I don't have to have this. It's just a matter of paperwork. I just do not.
But I really don't see how you can't continue. I feel, honestly, I can't see that you can continue if you want your term,
Right.
the rest of your term,
Right.
without being paid. I mean, that,
We can find that
they
out.
can't stop you from doing that.
We can find that out with our own city solicitor.
So I just find it very hard to start something here that might backfire people that were turned down in the past, like the incident I just mentioned. I'm sure there's more out there that have been turned down.
It could have been that she was a cafeteria worker that was on call. I don't know the situation.
Well, I mean, but I'm sure there's many people out there that had, not many, but I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, you know, a lot of people that tried to get two salaries from the city, and it's not allowed. Shame on the Ethics Commission for putting on the council, because you know, I don't think it should be our decision to actually vote on this. But where it is, I'll just have to do it the way I feel that I have to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Councilor Morabito.
School Committee Man McGuire, I guess my question would be, when push comes to shove, are you looking just to finish off your term as school committee person?
Yes.
Or would you be looking to, would you be willing to do it without the stipend?
I do it without the stipend, but what I'm being told by state ethics is it has to, you can't do one without the other.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend, and he was fine with getting a recommendation from the city solicitor.
You just stated previously that we can't hold this over. We can't table it. Mr. McGuire told us we can't table it. Then he also has.
Listen, you're all friends, vote your conscience, I have no problem one with the other. I
Well,
just wanted to clear
let
the
me
air.
take everybody off the hook here. Everybody is friends here with you, Danny. You're a well-liked individual. And it pains us to make decisions sometimes against a very good guy like you.
Thank
And
you.
so
Thank you.
I don't want to offer any excuse for anybody. Everybody has a right to vote how they feel.
Right.
But in judgment of you, everybody likes you very much in conversation that we've had over the years. So
Thank
please, whatever the bearing is tonight, don't let that be a reflection of the individual.
I'm a big
because
boy.
We're charged with a responsibility, and we're doing what our constituents ask us to do.
Thank you.
Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this just puts us in a really tough situation. You've done an amazing job for our school system.
That's
and
what I want to hear,
What
Jess.
you've
Thank you.
done, you're welcome, and you've done a lot for the kids in the school system. You put your own children through our school system, so I don't think that something like this should cast a shadow on all the work that you've done for the years that you have for the city of Revere. And I know that Seacoast is very lucky to have you, and that you're going to be doing a great job there, working with those kids.
I did the
so-
right thing.
Of course. And it's a tough situation because I want to see you finish your term on the school committee because you've committed so many years to it and you've done so much for it.
Right.
But I don't see why the school committee would be any different than the city council. So if Councilor McKenna could do the paperwork however that she needed to, finish her year, retire, and then be on the city council, I really hope that there's a way we can do the same for you. So I know that this is a time restraint, and unfortunately, I can't support it because of that tonight.
Right.
But I hope that there's something that we can do so that you can finish your term on the school committee.
Right, because I wouldn't have been
Something
back
else that
here
we can
unless I
do.
got a phone call from the lawyer of the day.
Of
No,
course.
this is the way it has to be done. It's
So
okay.
my recommendation would be, can we put in an additional motion to get a recommendation from the city solicitor and the ethics commission on how we can allow him to finish his term on the school committee?
Okay, prior to doing that, I'm going to have, because I have the pleasure of the full council here, that concludes all of the appointment subcommittee members speaking. Are there any other city councilors wishing to speak at this particular time? If not, we can, Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Danny, I consider you a friend, and I think you're a great school committee member, and no matter who you were, I couldn't support this.
Right.
I can't support two paychecks, but
Well, maybe we can make a motion with no pay, and if the ethics
I can certainly
applies,
support
I have no
no
problem
pay.
with that.
Yeah, that I can certainly support. I'd like to see you finish your term as
You're
a school
talking
committee member.
about a small amount of money.
Yeah, I understand
The
that.
ethics doesn't look at it that way. Well,
Well-
you can't just stay there, so.
Yeah. Well,
And
I-
the city is not paying me, so.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that if the question were asked correctly to ethics, they would say you can serve without salary. I'd be willing to bet on that. And I've had my dealings with ethics recently, in fact.
Right.
So that's an inside joke.
Thank you, Council. I certainly think that
thank you.
that's a sentiment.
But anyways, I want to just say thank you for your service. You've done a great job as a school committeeman. You've been great for the kids of this city, and we appreciate it. And these votes do not reflect in any way how we feel about you.
No, I'd probably vote the same way if I was in your chair. So.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. I think because of shortness of time, I think it's fair to say that we have a motion was going to be made, and it would come from a person from within the subcommittee. Councilor Janino, would you make that motion?
Yes.
Motion to remove the monetary
Sure, so
part of it and
Yes.
allow Mr. McGuire to continue on serving on the school committee without remuneration.
Absolutely.
Members of the subcommittee, all in favor? All opposed? Members of the city council, all in favor, all opposed? This will be audited out without remuneration, and you will be asked to serve the term expiring December 31st. Thank you, Dan, for appearing. And again, I hate to indulge upon you but we have a serious situation going on in the city. We need an auditor as soon as possible because in the absence of a auditor who has left. We have an application here before us. His name is Richard Viskay as the new auditor and budget director. Is Richard in the audience? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please, and give us a brief outline as to
your background and what you intend to do, all the good deeds for our city. Hit the button, Richard.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate you taking this matter in your hands. My name is Richard Viskey. I am a resident of Revere. I've lived here since 1993. Currently live at 87 Harris Street in Revere. I've been in municipal finance about 20 years now. I started with the Department of Revenue, working for the Division of Local Services, certifying tax rates, free cash, and represent most of the communities. Didn't represent Revere because you couldn't represent the city you lived in. From the Department of Revenue, I've been the finance director for the town of Wenham. I was the finance director for the city of Salem for Kim Driscoll for 7 years. I served as the CFO of the city of Everett under Mayor Di Maria, and I currently am the comptroller for the town of Arlington. Like I said, pretty much the same type of work, doing auditing, budget, finance, CFO for the past 20 years, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve the city I live in, and I hope that I have your support. Thank you.
Any questions from the membership of the City Appointment Subcommittee? Appointment Subcommittee first. Any members of the subcommittee? Councilor Morabito.
I'm very impressed with your resume, and I think you'll do a fine job as city auditor. I guess my question is, what do you think will be your biggest challenge as a city auditor, taking over a vacant position with the city?
I think the biggest challenge is going to be understanding the culture and the nature of how the budget process works here and how the mayor and the council interact, and then basically making sure that we present balanced budgets, stay within the limits of Proposition 2.5. I know there's some pretty big projects, like a new high school building project, estimated that costs around $300 million, so I look forward to try to work and get that high school built. I do have children in the school system. I put one daughter through Revere High School. I got a sophomore in Revere High right now, so, basically just making sure the revenues equal the expenditures and following the Mass General laws, and hopefully serve the city well and bring us forward. And technology-wise, I guess it's a little behind as well, so I'd like to try to get us updated with some technology advances as well. So,
Excellent. And you have George Anzoni, who you're going to partner up with, and he'll brush you up to speed as well.
yeah, I've known George a while, so I look forward to it.
Any other members of the Appointment Subcommittee wishing to speak? Seeing none, Councilor Rotundo.
Talk about the ace in the hole. Rick Viskey is the consummate person when it comes to municipal finance or anything dealing with auditing in the city. We are going to be well served by Rick Viskey. I've known him now since, the first time that I ran for office.
Yeah, a long time.
And back then, I wanted you to come on board, if you recall.
That's right.
Accolades are not sufficient to really denote his capacities. We are truly getting a top shelf person. So I welcome you here. I welcome your expertise. I'm sure George is going to utilize it to his fullest, as well as share your knowledge with the community, which is going to be vitally important. This is an excellent pick, Brian. This is, the second thing we've agreed on this week. So we're both on a roll. So that's more than amazing. But that said, welcome, Rick, and I'm glad to see you here in Revere, working for us this time.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors wishing? Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick's resume speaks for itself, but what I want to speak to is his character. I've known him for many, many years. I knew his mother, and he comes from great stock, and he's a person of integrity, and I couldn't be happier with this appointment. I am thrilled, and kudos to the mayor for seeing the talent and getting it when it was available. So I think we will be served very well, and very happy you're on board. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Seeing no other councilors want to speak, councilors of the Appointment Subcommittee, all in favor? All opposed? Richard will be asked out favorably this evening. No, we'd like to have you in attendance if you'd like to stay around. We're going to vote this out this evening. The mayor would like to say a few words.
All right, happy to stay around.
And we're gonna vote this out this evening. So, and
Okay,
thereafter you can meet up with the mayor and you can
get sworn in and all that stuff.
Okay, thank you very much.
Congratulations, do a good job for our community.
Just very quickly,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate the kind words from the council. Richard is a consummate professional. Was very excited in having him be interested in coming to work here. He is a Revere resident, as you mentioned. He is somebody who is raising his family here and has kids in the system. And this really speaks to the ability to tap into a talent pool that's here in the city that we're excited about. And I know that we are going to be a lot better off as a city with somebody like Richard in that position. One other thing that I do want to say is that Lori Giardello, who was our former auditor, did a fantastic job, and we appreciate all of her hard work and her service to the city over a number of years.
Those are kind words. Any other councilors wishing to speak? Well, we'll review that, and we'll vote this out favorably this evening before the committee as a whole, and congratulations. Do a good job. You'll be seeing a lot of us in the future. Next is we have a reappointment to the Revere Housing Authority Board, Anthony Peroni. He called me earlier and he was unable to attend, but where this is a reappointment and each member of the council knows this individual very well, is there any objection to this going forward this evening from many council members? Okay, we will vote Anthony out favorably out of the subcommittee. We will vote this to the committee of the whole this evening, and thank you very much for attending the appointment subcommittee for the meeting of November 13th. Thank you for your attendance.
Good evening. I call to order the meeting of Monday, November 13th, 2017. We'll all rise and salute the flag.
Roll call of the members. Councilor Janino?
Here.
Here. Councilor Guanasso?
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna?
Here?
Here. Councilor Morabito?
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes, here.
Here. Councilor Patch?
Here.
Here. Councilor Powers?
Here.
Here. Councilor Rotundo?
Present.
Here. Councilor Zambudo?
Here.
Here. And Council Vice President Keith?
Here.
Here. Quorum is present.
Mr. President,
Council Powers?
I'd like to ask that the council stand for a gentleman that a longtime employee of the city of Revere, Mr. Harvey Corin. He served as Superintendent of Public Works and also as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I'd like to ask the council to stand.
Who was he?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd also like to ask that we suspend rules to take up number 12, 389 on the calendar this evening,
Julie DeMauro is here, and John Squibb, and this is to discuss the healthy initiatives. They're looking to get a grant from the state to deal with trees in the city. And as you all know, all my colleagues know, we get calls every other day with regard to different trees and what we can do to clear that up. So, Julie?
All in favor?
This is calendar item number 11, Council Order 17-389, communication from the Healthy Community Initiatives Office relative to amendments to the city's tree ordinance and requesting acceptance of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 87.
Ms. DeMauro?
Hi, Julie DeMauro from the Healthy Community Initiatives Office. Thank you for bumping this along. I'm here with John Squibb from the Community Development Office, and we are looking to change the current tree ordinances that we have on the books. Right now, the duties of shade trees are under the city engineer, and we'd like to change Section 1204-340 and 1220-050 to be that the city, that those duties now come under the tree warden, which is currently Paul Argenzio. We are also asking that the council accept the Mass General Laws, Chapter 87, in regards to shade trees, and put this in our ordinances as recognized as so. And the reason why we are doing this is because we are applying for Tree City recognition with the National Arbor Day Foundation. We are hoping that this will help with our tree maintenance, as well as allow us to plant more trees throughout the city. So part of the recognition requires that we have a tree warden who's actually in charge. That would be Paul. We establish a tree board, which would be, right now it's Paul Argenzio and myself. And then we would have to declare a National Arbor Day for the upcoming year of 2018. So this is why we are approaching the council. It's pretty straightforward, but our neighboring cities and towns, that do have tree recognition, they've actually received close to $80,000 to $100,000 worth of tree maintenance and funding to help with their tree planting and maintenance and what have you.
Thank you. Any councilors? Council McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice President. Julie, I think this is wonderful. I put a motion in when I first got on the council to be a tree city, tree recognition city, especially in Beachmont. We need trees because of the planes and the fuel, so I would really like to see more trees come into the city and be taken care of, because there's a lot of issues we have, especially with the wrong trees that they planted years ago. They're all breaking. They can't hold the weight. So this is a wonderful motion. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. This will go in, all of these changes will need to be approved and actually recorded by December 31st for us to receive the recognition.
Council Rotundo?
December 31st, yep.
Thank you. So what is the yearly cost to this? Because obviously there's a cost attributed to it afterwards.
So the cost to apply for this grant right now, or just
No,
for
to
the cost?
to
For the
maintain
maintain. Right now, it's per capita, we're averaging about $3.25 per resident. That's what it's costing us. We get a lot of trees donated from DCR, and they do a lot of the planting. They also did the donate tree program that we.
So what dollar amount? That's what I'm.
Yeah, right now we're averaging about probably, I want to say probably anywhere from 60,000 to maybe maybe 50 to 60,000 for trees.
So what are we spending right now?
That's what we're spending roughly.
And what will we need to spend thereafter?
Well, we'll be eligible for grants so that we would be able to, we wouldn't be paying out the 50, 60,000 for tree maintenance. We'd actually be getting money in to help us with that.
So there's no additional cost in order to obtain this?
No, there's no additional cost. And there's no requirement that we have to plant so many trees a year. It's going to be more about, maintaining what we have, replacing what gets knocked down, and then they'd be able to help us in terms of like maintenance as well as, replanting trees as needed.
One of the other questions that I have is, what is the types of tree we'll be getting? One of the things that I've noticed throughout the city is we buy a tree, and it's happened in the past, in particular up on Park Avenue, and then the tree uproots the sidewalk. Same thing on Fennel Street. So what trees do we know of that will, not have these problems, not overgrow, et cetera? What genus?
So actually, John's going to talk to you a little bit about that because he's worked on the construction end of that.
John Squibb, Office of Strategic Planning, Economic Development. We've been planting Chanticleer pears and Bradford pears. True, the system goes straight down. Pardon me for my cold. The root system won't affect the sidewalks. That's why we picked these two type of trees.
Okay, so we're going to be picking trees that won't affect the
Exactly.
sidewalk?
Oh, yeah.
And that will be limited by height, or, obviously, because they get into the wires, et
They're probably
cetera?
running about 20 feet.
What's the highest?
About 20 feet.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I'm for this.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. These are some of the trees that we've been planting recently.
Yes, they are.
That have not intruded into the sidewalks.
Not at all.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Can any of the monies from the grants be used for, I heard the word maintenance used, for removal of trees or stumps or anything like that?
Removal of trees, yes. Stump removal, I'm not quite clear on that, but I'm assuming it would be part of a tree maintenance program.
Yeah, because that seems to be a major expense and a problem in the city.
So the tree, are you looking for the number of trees that have been removed, or?
No, I'm just looking to see if any, I think last year we appropriated $50,000 for tree removal and tree maintenance. When I say maintenance, I mean people call up and there are dead trees that have to be removed, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if any of those monies could be used for that purpose.
The maintenance program would I'm almost sure would cover removal of stumps.
Okay. Yeah, because I have several that, we've sort of put on hold. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Julie, a great job. I get a lot of calls on trees. Basically, I was told for new trees that West Revere wasn't going to be able to get them because they were all going down to my dear friend, and Ward 2 here was getting all the trees at Shirley Ave area. But but it is, I do get requests for new ones, but I'm glad to see that the money, the real problem is those old trees that they planted years ago. I mean, I keep getting calls, people, their drains are getting, the roots are getting in their drains, and we seem to go through that money every year, removing trees. So hopefully, and once you remove them, the people would like to have a new tree put in, on most cases, and so thank you for the good work, and hopefully we can have more money to get rid of some of these old trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Julie, you know I'm a big supporter of trees. Just to clarify what my colleague to my left said, the trees that are being planted by DCR is specific on planting trees in coastal Revere, okay, along the coast, and their borderline is Revere Street, north to even Beachmont, and also from Broadway east down to the beach. So that's their parameters. They're giving us trees for nothing and planting them in these specific areas because they're more contingent with the DCR properties. So we thank them for that, and it's very good. But what I want to ask, some of the trees that they've been providing to us, you know, and I always are concerned about the heights, especially with wires and things like that. But some of the trees, they've been given various types of trees on the street sidewalks, on the sidewalks. And, you know, they're, I mean, you know, I don't want to say they're mongrels, but they're all different types. How does that affect our philosophy and what we're going to be planting?
So the types of trees that would get planted now, they would be low, they would have a low root ball, I mean, a short root ball, and they're looking at trees that don't get that high. I do know that in Chelsea, they took down a lot of the trees that were planted, and they replanted them with these trees that are native to New England, resistant to disease, and also as well that the roots won't be buckling up the sidewalks. Another thing that we have been working with a little bit with the Community Development Department, Mike Kessman actually got this material that would go around the base of the tree well, and it would basically keep the roots intact from coming up, and then it would also resist like weeds to grow through it, so it would allow for less maintenance on our part to kind of make sure those tree wells are always well maintained, free of weeds, and keeping the roots from coming up.
Great program, supported 100%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Just very quickly for the council's edification, I also want to note in terms of trees that we have a capital improvement plan that's before you, and we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, and we're going to talk in more detail throughout the next, I think, couple of weeks and probably a couple of months. But there is an item in there ongoing throughout the next 5 years for $50,000 in tree planting and removal. So just to let you know that additionally to what we put in the operating budget, we look at this as a capital improvement and something that's going to last a long time, hopefully, and the trees hopefully will last for decades. And so we want to make sure that that's being accounted for, and I just wanted to kind of put that in everyone's mind and on the radar when we're talking about the capital improvement plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Julie, I just want to ask one more question. Do you have a number of trees that you'll plant yearly, or you don't have that information anymore?
No, I do. So just for this initial round, we, let's see, we have planted, I'm trying to see, hold on one second. Trees planted total, 97 trees. That's for the last 2 years. Trees pruned, we've pruned about 86, and we've removed about, let's say, 40 trees. So that has been our estimate. I believe that was for 2016 and 2017. Those are the numbers that we have so far. A lot of that has to do with the construction on Mountain Ave. When they redid Mountain Ave, they put in all new trees. It's probably a little higher than it should be at this time, only because we had so much construction. And then we also have to take into account that anytime we have any new development, site plan review requires that whether it be a home or an apartment, they require so many trees and shrubs to be planted as well before they can get an occupancy permit. So we don't have those numbers, I think, because we just have what's being planted by the city end. But I'm sure that the number of trees planted is probably a little bit higher when you take into site plan review and their requirements for any new construction that happens here in the city.
Right. Well, I know I've planted probably about 40 or 50 trees in the last 2 years. I don't know if John could say anything about that, but I know in Ward 1 I've put a lot of trees back where they got knocked down from the tornado, and then in Beachmont. But I was just wondering, when you take down a tree, do you put one back up? Because that's very important too.
Well, yes, and I believe that is what does happen. Once the tree does come down for whatever reason, whether it's diseased or the root ball is wrecking the sidewalk or is going into the telephone wires, I think a lot of times the trees do come down is because they're starting to rot out. I think everybody's trying to keep the tree as it is. But when they do come down, they have been replacing them. So, and they can be very expensive. The tree can range anywhere from $400 to $500 a tree by the time you're done putting it in and then some. So you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morbido.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, Julie, I'd like to commend you on all your hard work. You've been doing a great job to improve the quality of life in Revere for citizens.
Thank you.
I don't see any of us having an issue with this. Mr. Vice President, I ask that we move this to a vote.
Thank you, Councilor. I agree. A lot of the questions that I was going to ask were asked by my fellow councilors. One brief one, the $80,000 to $100,000 in potential grant money, would that be annually?
It would be individual grants per year that we would apply for. So it would, but we feel that there is a need and that, we would just keep applying every year to help us offset our budget as well as to be able to plant more trees. So the grant is open every year, but the tree recognition is the first step.
Thank you. And one last request, can I just get the trees on Park Ave replaced that have been knocked down, the new ones? Thank you.
On Park, okay,
Yeah.
we'll hit that area first. How's
Good.
that sound?
As long as you do that, I'm okay with this. All right, so this is going to go to a roll call vote on the acceptance of the provisions of MGLC 87. Roll call.
Shall the City Council accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 87? Counselor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council Vice President Keefe?
Yes.
Yes. MGL Chapter 87 has been accepted.
And this is going to go to a public hearing on November 27th, 2017. Back to regular business.
Approval of the Journal of the meeting of October 23rd, 2017.
All approved? So ordered.
Calendar item number 3, communication from the mayor relative to the DPW facility study.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Vice President, good evening. Good evening, councilors. I apologize for the cough and the hoarseness, but I'll do my best to get through this. I'm sure Councilor Patch or Powers can grab me some water if I need it. But
I'm more than happy to give you CPR.
won't need that, Councilor. Thank you. Thanks for the offer, though. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So tonight we have a number of capital conversations that we're going to have, and the first one is about the DPW facility. Obviously, we all know that the DPW facility is in dire need of some work, and that building is not representative of our community. And the fact is, Councilor, thank
If
you.
you pass out,
Thank
no.
you. Did you put anything in it? We all know that the DPW building is in deplorable condition, and this is a capital investment that has been kicked down the can. We've kicked the can down the road a number of years, and I early on addressed this council and said that we would not continue to do that, and we are going to make sure that our DPW staff has the appropriate working conditions that they need. To kind of fast forward, because we have some folks from Weston and Sampson who are going to walk through a presentation that they've put together, I want to start off by taking the sticker shock off the table for everyone and saying that a new building will cost in the vicinity of $22 million, which is why we're having this conversation, and I think why we're going to continue to have this conversation. The study that was done by Weston and Sampson, and again, they'll go through it very quickly, and I know we're going to have ongoing conversations with the Public Works Subcommittee, But the study that was done was really a valuable exercise because we obviously have some difficult choices to make, and there are multiple options before us that I want to collaborate with the council on and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page and that we're all moving in the same direction. With all of that said, I will introduce to you the folks from Weston and Sampson, Jeff Alberti and J.P. Parnas, who are vice president and project manager, who have worked on this project. Their presentation, I think, is in your hands by now. It should be, and we will obviously. I will be around to answer any questions that anyone has, but I want to make sure that everyone understands this isn't a kind of one conversation and we're done. We look forward to an ongoing dialogue, and I've already talked to the chairman of Public Works. I know that we'll have ongoing conversations about this, and I know we'll be able to collaborate on a space that everybody can be proud of. All right, so, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. I'm pleased to be here this evening. I was wondering if there's any chance that computer could be rotated a little bit just so I can keep track of the slides while speaking to you. Perfect. Thank you very much. So I understand, again, my name is Jeff Alberti with Weston and Sampson, and J.P. Parn is with me as well. And I understand that this will be discussed quite a bit as you move forward. So I do have a lengthy presentation, but what I will try to do is go through it quickly, try to hit on the highlights, and then I'm happy to answer any questions and get into any more detail you may have. So with regard to Weston and Sampson and our experience, we've been involved in more than 125 of these facilities in New England. We've seen a lot of facilities going through this process, and so we brought that to bear on this project. And what I wanted to talk about this evening really is the Public Works responsibilities, and that's important because that's really what drives the size of the facility and the cost of the facility. Talk a little bit about why the city needs a new facility. I'm pretty sure you all have a very good understanding of that, so I'll skip through that very quickly. But then we'll talk about what's proposed and what the options are, and then we'll close with some of the benefits, which is really benefits not only for the operations, but for the community as a whole. So with regard to the Public Works responsibilities, there's a lot of information. I could probably spend the whole presentation on that, but I just wanted to touch on the key elements. First being the first line. DPW touches the lives of the residents every day by maintaining the infrastructure that the community relies on. If you look at a list of what DPW does, from maintaining 83 miles of road to maintenance of the parks, to the drinking water infrastructure, to the sewage system infrastructure, to managing household collections of solid waste, think about what you use on a daily basis. They're maintaining that infrastructure that we all rely on. It's also important to note that they are on call 24 hours a day for some of the obvious snow and ice storms, to hurricane, tornado cleanup, to flooding, water main breaks. And that's important because that really drives the function and layout of the facility. We want them to be able to respond quickly and efficiently to the needs of the community. And in fact, American Public Works Association said it best with one of their cover articles. Public Works, they're the first responders who are there until the emergency is over. So it's important that as we program and lay out a facility, that we develop one that will allow them to respond efficiently to the needs of the city. So with regard to why does the city need a new facility, and for those who haven't been to the facility, I just wanted to show some photographs of what we observed through the feasibility study. But generally speaking, the main facility, it's undersized. It does not meet the current operations. The responsibilities and the growth of the community have increased significantly over the decades, but the facility hasn't kept pace. And as a result, it doesn't meet today's operations, doesn't meet the future operations. It poses efficiency issues as well as safety issues for the staff within that facility. These are some of the photographs that we observed looking around the inside of the building. And what we found is that you have a very valuable multi-million-dollar fleet that's used to maintain this infrastructure. And it has to be jam-packed in like sardines into this existing structure, making it very inefficient, unsafe, poses potential damage to the equipment stored within that facility. Due to the size, it's undersized, we have a large portion of that multi-million-dollar fleet left outdoors. This reduces the life expectancy of that equipment. It impacts the maintenance costs and also results in inefficiencies in trying to get it out on the road to respond to the needs of the community. As you move back inside and you look at some of the existing facilities, just the general worker support spaces, woefully inadequate. The photo on the right shows what remains of a former toilet, and on the left is the snow operations area where the staff will be gathered when they're there for a 48-hour storm event. Just really inadequate facilities to support their basic needs. Furthermore, as you look inside on the existing building, there are no floor drains. They have been plugged up due to issues associated with where that discharges, and as a result, you have a lot of standing water across the entire floor, making it unsafe and inefficient for the staff. This next photograph was interesting because when it was first inserted into our presentation, I thought, well, why are we showing a photograph of a interior light? But in fact, that's a hole in the roof, so you can see right out from the inside of this building. And then finally, looking at some of the other structures, the support structures, the salt shed is deteriorating. Inside, there's tarps to try to protect the office areas shown in the upper left. There's a sinking floor in the bottom right. And inside the office space, you'll see some red arrows appear. These show you what happens with those leaks. You have ceiling tile that's stained, you have ceiling tiles that have actually fallen in, and then the last arrow in the bottom right shows the computers, and they're actually covered in plastic to try to protect them from that water that's been entering the facility. So in summary, you have a building that doesn't meet today's building codes, it does not meet today's plumbing codes or mechanical codes, and poses issues to the operational efficiencies, and also results in safety concerns for the staff. So that really set the stage for us to move forward with coming up with a plan that would meet your needs. Looking at what is proposed, we spent quite a bit of time with the staff to understand your operation. We've done a lot of these, but we wanted to focus it in on your operation, build it around your operation. And we developed programming sketches for every single space that would go within this facility. Everything from offices to employee facilities, locker rooms, to larger maintenance areas or vehicle and equipment storage areas. Through this process, we identified a total square footage of roughly 56,200 square feet. We did have some site restrictions, so we spent some time refining that program, and we were able to reduce the total program down to 47,500 square feet, feeling that we still would meet your operational needs now and into the future. Then from there, we began the process of developing conceptual alternatives. In reviewing conceptual alternatives, we wanted to look at multiple approaches. And so the first approach that we identified was new construction. Knock down what's there, build new. Second approach was to look at partial renovation. Can we keep some of the structure renovated and then build some new additions to meet the needs? And then the third approach was what we refer to as a short-term solution with a phased long-term improvement, meaning we would have multiple phases over a 10-year period to address the deficiencies that exist. And in summary, approach one for the new construction consists of, this is the existing site you can see outlined in red. There are some wetlands shown in green to the upper part of the screen. And we took all of those programming requirements and just like simple block pieces, we began piecing them together on site. We wanted to find the most efficient layout from an operational perspective, but also one from an overall cost effectiveness. How could we combine a structure into a single structure and save some money through some of those construction efficiencies? Once we developed our initial approach for new construction, we developed a site plan and we developed a cost. Through this process, we determined that the total construction cost of both your construction of the building plus all of your soft costs would be about $22.5 million. So we then took the approach of looking at what might that look like as a cost-effective building. This is an aerial view of the existing facility. And the next slide shows you what it might look like as a very cost-effective pre-engineered metal building that would support the community for many, many years. Alternative two really involved the renovation and new construction. Essentially what we found through this process is that we would keep a portion of the existing building, which is shown highlighted. We would demolish some of it, and build some new additions around the site, coming up with a final plan that consists of both new and renovation. Through this process, we determined that the total cost for this facility as a renovated and new would be roughly $21.1 million. So clearly it's not a big savings trying to renovate the old structure, and essentially through the process we determined that's probably not a viable option for this facility. And then finally the approach 3, which is our phased approach, which assumes that we would build this over a 10-year period, consists of having some temporary trailers off-site to allow the facility to, the occupied spaces to move into these temporary facilities. From there, we would renovate portions of the existing building and then demolish, as shown in red, the larger portion of the building. And then from there, we'd be able to build some additional structures on site. And as part of that phased approach, we really wanted to look at cost-effective structures, and what we're proposing is tension membrane structures. And what these consist of, as you see in the photographs on the screen in front of you, are, for the salt storage, it's a block base with a tension membrane structure to house and protect that salt. And then for the larger vehicle and equipment storage area, because once that building's demolished, we would expose all that equipment outside, we'd provide a tension membrane structure for that. Phase 2 would consist of building a 2-story addition at roughly year 6, and then phase 3 would include building the remaining piece, which is the new fuel island, new maintenance area, wash bay, and then replacing that tension membrane structure at year 10 with a more permanent structure such as a pre-engineered metal building. So in summary, if you took those 3 phases, you look at the area highlighted in red, there are 3 costs. Phase 1, which would be the immediate cost of roughly $4.9 million. Phase 2, on or about year 6, would be $6.2 million. Phase 3, on or about year 10, would be $14 million, for a total cost of roughly $25.2 million. So to sum that up, and I know that's a lot of information, I'm sure we'll go into much more detail down the road, you have 3 approaches. Approach 1, new construction, $22.5 million. Approach 2, renovation and new, really no savings. We recommend that not be considered further. And approach 3 would be pushing the costs out to 3 different periods for a total of $25.2 million. It's important to note, though, as you look at approach 1 and approach 3, what you have is a reduction in the square footage. Because of the construction type, what you'd find is that you cannot build the full program of 47,000 square feet. We could only build roughly 37,000 square feet. And that's because you have different materials that are trying to combine at each of the different phases, and we have to have some separation of those functions. So in summary on the different approaches, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages, and I don't want to read all these at this point, but what we found is that approach 1 had a lot more advantages than disadvantages, and we found that approach 3 had similar amount of advantages, but did have a bit more disadvantages because of the impacts of that phased approach. Each of these would be further evaluated. And in closing, I just wanted to close with some positive feedback on what this facility would mean for the community. Number 1, it would provide you with an improved code-compliant facility for the DPW and the community. It would protect the city's multi-million-dollar investment in vehicles and equipment. It would result in much more efficient space, much more efficient response times, allowing the DPW to get more done, and would eliminate the need to invest money in the existing substandard facility with really no return on your investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any councilors have any questions? Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. Sir, thank you for your presentation. It's greatly respected. A lot of what you put forward regarding the both limitations and upkeep of the property were unfortunately duly noted beforehand. My question is, for me, the best approach is approach number 1. It gets this done with quickly and efficiently. What would be the time phrase from shovel to key opening for this project?
Short answer is about 24 months, including design, bidding, and construction.
So what would be the construction phase? How long would that take?
That's typically 14 to 16 months. We're guessing about 16 in this scenario.
And what would you figure, through you to the mayor, and perhaps maybe Judge, my understanding is just around, what, $10,000 per month, $13,000 per month, if we floated a bond for this project at $22 million?
So at maximum, the bond would hit around 2024, right, George? And it'd be about $700,000 debt service a year. That'll be the kind of the maximum.
We'll be doing a 20-year bond?
30-year.
A 30-year bond?
Right, 30 years.
Yeah, so it's just about 13,000 per month. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we could definitely do that, reflecting on the budget from last year, and free cash. More importantly, what would it cost in order to have the temporary trailers that we're going to be putting down over at?
So we've brought the trailers to bid. Unfortunately, we got one bidder who did not submit an adequate bid. So those are going back out. We figured, I think we had appropriated somewhere between $75,000 and $100,000 for those those units. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, respectfully.
And those are going to happen regardless, right?
Right, no,
Regardless
I
of
get
what we talk about and how we
Sure.
continue the conversation.
Sure.
The workers down at DPW are going to be in mobile units. We just need to bid them and do it legally and make sure that we
So my
check all the
question
boxes.
is I consider this an emergency under DCAM. You're allowed to basically forego the bidding process because it is an emergency. It's a threat to human health.
So I'm pretty sure that we looked into whether or not we could consider
couldn't
it
do
an
it based upon
emergency.
that?
And I can follow up on it. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that we're looking at every
Because right now
possible
the
way
building's
to make it
condemnable.
happen
Would you not say that, Mr.
tomorrow.
Sampson?
But, and I believe that by state law, and again, we can double check, but an emergency usually involves the interests of public health, like of the public health in general, based on an event usually. But we can find out.
Yeah. But at this point, my understanding, I've spoken to people, this building's condemnable. It's not habitable.
Right, I couldn't speak to condemnable, that would typically come through the building official, but it has
I mean, it has
exceeded
black-
its useful life, it has water issues, it has
I
roof
mean, you were
issues.
down there. I mean, there's
Yes.
black mold on the wall. There is spores on the wall.
Yes.
You've got standing water that has those spores within it.
Yes.
You've got oil and other products that are on the ground that are clearly cancer-causing. So this is pretty straightforward. I mean, am I incorrect?
No, you're not incorrect, it's a very
Could
tough
you repeat
building.
that?
No, you're not incorrect, it is a very tough building, it's exceeded its useful life.
Yeah, so whatever we can do to expedite this, Mr. Mayor, I'd greatly appreciate it. And so I'm all for this. I would like to go with phase one, get it done quick. And the people that serve us, deserve better. More importantly, and I don't know if it's possible, Mr. Mayor, if we could add them to the public safety profile of the community. I guess there's some legal connotations towards that, which might change further funding and other processes in the future, but so be it. I've got Motrin in my car. You look terrible. Thank you.
Council Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Sampson, question. Years ago, when we had a full complement of employees at the DPW facility on Broadway, I believe we had at one time 140, 150 employees down there, performing many, many different functions. This building that's being proposed, what would that house with regard to the complement of employees that would be working out of there down the future, assuming that we had the resources to put those employees on the payroll?
Sure, that's a great question. What we did through our feasibility study is we identified the current staffing, and then we also identified potential future staffing, because we want to make sure that as there are changes to your staffing, that the building is not too small. So we accommodated upwards of 30 current staff, and then we provide provisions for expansion for future growth, anywhere in the 15 to 20 personnel range. And that doesn't have a major impact on space, because that's the workforce that are primarily out on the road.
But it would have an impact on equipment that would be
also
stored there, right?
Yeah, we've also accounted for equipment storage as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Council Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Seeing this package, I'm very invigorated, to say the least, having to have worked to get to this point for the past 7 or 8 years on this city council. And I believe it was during Mayor Ambrosino's term that I put the motion in that we get a new facility. And I like what I see. I'm glad to hear we are moving forward with it because DPW workers are not working in the best conditions. And they work hard and they deserve a decent place to work. Despite the fact most of them are on the road anyways, but the ones that are in the building, and when they do go in the building. Knowing we have to spend up anywhere between 22 and 25 million, depending on how long we go out in the bond, and realizing too, and I believe I may get this confirmed by the mayor, no, all the money won't be coming from the operational portion, it'll be from water and sewer, from the enterprise fund.
That's correct. So we would be able to bond or pay for the bonds through both the general fund and the water and sewer fund. So the operating budget, that $700,000 a year number in debt service would be split between water and sewer in the general fund.
Do we have any potential amount of money that it would increase the water, which I hate to say?
We could look into that. As I mentioned in our previous conversation, we have a lot of debt related to our water and sewer infrastructure needs. The projects that we've taken on based on the consent decree are projects that the ratepayer is going to be paying for a very long time. So we can definitely, as we have further conversations, figure out what the impact would be on our rate. But my initial kind of reaction to it is that it would be no more than what we're already in for with the consent decree, given that the consent decree is upwards of $150 million.
Now, and you did say that our bond would go into 2024?
The full debt service would hit 2024.
Okay. So, Mr. Vice President, I look forward to working with everybody on this. I know it's not a quick fix, but in the next, hopefully, 6 months, this council can go out and support our public works employees and make them feel better that we really do care about them. And I'm not saying we never did, but we really do care about them. We realize how hard they really work. And seeing them in some of those holes fixing broken pipes, I've witnessed it, I've seen it, and I know that they do their job to the utmost. And I look forward to continuing making this facility happen and quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I think that this is really, really, really important. It's amazing that the DPW is able to do as much as it does for our community, given the circumstances that its employees work under. It's understaffed, it's not maintained, and they're incredible. They respond to people almost immediately. They respond to our concerns as a council almost immediately. So it really shows you what a great team we do have, that they work under these conditions. You saw the pictures, it's completely deplorable. And the fact is, this generation and this administration and the city of Revere over the next 10 or 15 years is gonna have to deal with neglect that the city has had for decades. We have the consent decree that we're under. That's hundreds of years of neglect that we're paying for now. We have this building, we have our schools that we're building, and I hate to say it, but City Hall's next. We have a lot of old buildings in the city that need a lot of work, and because it wasn't taken care of 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we're dealing with it now. And it's unfortunate, but it has to happen. And, we're really lucky to have the people and the staff that we do in the city of Revere, but we need to show them that we care about them and we care about the health of their working environment and the safety of their working environment. So I think this is great. I think the first option is the best. I want to see it get done, and I hope that people are aware that this is the first of many projects that need to happen to get this city really up to date and to get its employees working in safe and healthy conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Guanasso.
Well, to be somewhat redundant, I think that obviously it's a long time in coming. This is a conversation that we've been waiting to have for many, many years. Now we're at the table and we're talking about it. And I think now it's becoming upon us that we have to vote this out as quick as possible, work with the administration as quick as possible, because the workforce is somewhat not really happy with the situation, and who could say otherwise, because their working conditions are nothing short of intolerable. But we have to give the workforce enough encouragement to go forward. Almost all of our departments now are pretty much taken care of, with the exception of City Hall. Police, fire, schools are all in pretty good order. But now our DPW needs some help, and it needs it fast. With the implementation of 311, it's going to become more important that we have a happy group of people working within that department, because they're going to be called on so quickly and so fast. And the response time is of urgency. It's something that has to be attended to. So a happy worker, it gets the results better for our community, and we give them the environment to work in the conditions that they should be in, what they've been working under. And no, it's to be repetitive to say it again. I couldn't believe the conditions down there, and it's so unhealthy. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to work as quickly as possible to get this result, and get the best product also while we're doing that for our workforce, and give them a place that they can go to and know that it's safe and sound, and the people are going to be beneficial from it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Alberti, I have a couple of questions for you. We've had companies come in that were building and fixing certain things that were broken in the city, and they would quote a certain amount of money, and then they would come back 2 years later and ask for more. Have you considered every single possibility in this structure that you're building, that it's going to be between 22 million and 25 million, and you're not going to come back in 2 years from now and ask for more money?
Yes, so our goal when we do a study like this is to turn over every stone. One of the benefits is that we've done a lot of these facilities. We're building 2 to 3 a year at this rate, and so we have a lot of good data on costs from a construction perspective. The thing that we can't predict is the escalation in the construction market, so what we've done is carried a lot of contingencies in that number.
Sure.
So we feel that we've done all that. We've done a lot of good information finding on the existing site, from the subsurface conditions to the environmental conditions, and all of that has been factored into that estimate with sufficient contingencies.
Thank you. And my second question is, this is the rendition of what the building's going to look like?
That's a very early rendition to simply show the simplicity and the cost effectiveness of it.
Okay, because this does abut a major marshland. I was just wondering if there's going to be any kind of landscaping that goes with this property? Because right now, I know, and you just said it was simple, but right now it's just very bland.
Yes, we just wanted to show that from an overall massing perspective. There's a lot more work to be done during design for the exterior envelope, to the landscaping and all of that. So there's quite a bit more that's done. Our goal is to provide the most cost-effective yet appealing building that will meet the city's requirements. So there's a lot more work to be done.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morabito.
Thank you. The current condition of our DPW is just upsetting. I think we can all agree on that. It's unfortunate that the work has had to work in that environment for so long, and I think this will, knowing that we're going to move forward with this, it will lift the morale in the city, knowing that we're going to be progressive with this. I think we must continue to handle our finances conservatively, but at the same time, we have a lot of aging infrastructure, and we have to invest in that. I'm going to echo some of the concerns of my fellow colleagues. We have the high school that's falling apart, that we need a new high school. We just fixed the roof we're fixing the roof on Garfield School. We have the senior center. We have the library, we have City Hall. We have so many aging infrastructures in our city, and we have to keep that in mind. It's going to be a pretty penny in the future, but we need to take care of that because we can't have our city employees working in horrible environments. With that said, thank you for that presentation. It was very informative.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. First, I want to thank you for the presentation. It was very, very nice. We've been looking forward to this for my 10 years on the council. We keep constantly bringing up how the conditions of the DPW building is. I mean, and the work is there. We are very lucky. We have one of the hardest working DPW departments around, and we got a water department that can actually handle any situation. A water department, just this last Thursday, we had a water break on Asti Ave, right down, and the water was back working very quickly. But the pipes are so old, the shutoff broke, so it leaked. And they said they'd be there Monday this morning, and to fix that. There was a puddle there all weekend, and it was amazing. I went down there, and they were working, and it makes you feel good that you can trust the DPW. To get back to the phase 1, 2, and 3. I am definitely for phase 1. I would like to see it torn down. I don't think there's anything good can happen to try to fix that building. And as far as the phase 3, I know what long phases of fixing does in this city. I mean, we've been dealing with CDN Smith for over 10 years, fixing with the decree that we have, and it's just like, I call it the Revere Big Dig. They just come back asking for more money, and it's just still waiting for the audit, by the way. But anyways, that's what happens when you do something on a long term. I think you just get down, and just continues to go on and on and on. So I'm definitely for phase 1. Let's get it done. Let's get these workers what they deserve as fast as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And Mr. Mayor?
Just very quickly, Mr. Vice President, I have to apologize and say that I misspoke when I mentioned the $700,000 in debt service. That is for both, that is in each the general fund and the water and sewer fund. So it would be a total of 1.4 million, 700 on the general fund side and 700 on the water and sewer side, and that is roughly $58,000 a month to the council's point earlier. So just wanted to make that correction known before anyone goes crazy.
So this is going to be, I'm going to ask that this be placed on file, but just some brief comments. We all know that environment drives the productivity of the employees, and to give them something to take pride in. Most of these employees live in the city of Revere, and I know that they already take pride in what they have, and there's not much over there, so they deserve this. And I'm definitely in favor of 1 as opposed to 2.
Mr. Vice President, just a point of clarification, place this on file?
It's just a communications.
Well,
there's nothing to, I mean, we're just voting on.
I think we ought to start thinking and put this into our system, even though we're coming to the end of the year. I think we still ought to put it in Public Works Committee and let it last. Even though we have to sign diet at the end, the mayor can come back in the first meeting in January, and we can get it back onto this subcommittee. But I don't want this to look like we're putting it aside and we're putting our public works guys and gals on the side burner. You know, I still think we ought to keep it on the books, leave it on the books, let it sign die and come back on in January.
I agree with you there. I wasn't trying to push anything off, but just, it's all it is, the level of communications. Council Zambudo, Council Rotundo, real quick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think at least if we did nothing else here tonight, we send a message to the employees that this is really going to happen. This is finally a reality. They've been waiting for a long time to hear that this is serious, and I commend you for putting this forward, even though it's a tough pill to swallow. It's it reminds me back when we had to build a public safety facility, and it was like a shock. It was sticker shock, and we all had a heart attack, but we knew that they were living in a condemned building then, just as the public works people are living in a condemned building now. So the good news is that help is on the way, and I commend you for putting this together, and we're moving forward here.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. I too misspoke. I was figuring around 100,000 a month, so I apologize. But that said, this isn't sexy. I remember Senator Galuccio at the time saying that about the police station. This isn't sexy. This isn't something that grabs eye, but it instills pride in our community. And the quicker we can move forward with this, Mr. Mayor, the quicker I'm on board with this. What time frame do you think we have in order to kind of start putting shovels in the ground, doing things of that nature? I understand the trailers are a separate issue, but what can we do now? And more importantly, is there a possibility of adding a recreation portion of it in the back, considering that we have that marshland there that we could actually utilize to some degree? But that said, what time frame are we talking about?
So that's why I wanted to get up and speak and mention that I would like to see it maybe remain in committee, so there would be a little bit further discussion, with hopefully the goal being that we come before you with the bond authorization pretty early on in the term of next year. You know, so hopefully maybe in January we come up and have, if those conversations continue, I think that's why I wanted to make sure I went to Public Works and we can kind of have a little bit more maybe detailed conversations about different things and look at the real layout of the different options and just fully vet them and have a full conversation, and then early on next year we can move forward with a bond authorization.
Thank you, and I apologize, I misspoke. So we're going to order this to Public Works Subcommittee. All in favor?
Mr. Vice President, if Madam Secretary can order the department heads to attend that meeting as well.
And please include the department heads to come to that meeting as well. All in favor?
Calendar item number 4, communication from the mayor relative to the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Mr. Vice President, good evening, everyone. Tonight's Capital Night, I think. So we have before you is a long-awaited 5-year capital improvement plan. It's a little bit of a preview of that plan. There will be a full conversation about all of it in a couple of weeks, where we have a lot more detail on each of the items. But I wanted to get this in front of you because I knew we were talking about the DPW facility. I knew that we were talking about a loan order for a new fire apparatus. I wanted to make sure that that the council understood and that the viewing public understood that we do not make these decisions in a vacuum. That all of the capital plans and capital improvements that we're talking about have been considered and put into a master plan. The one thing that I will say is that we have one outstanding capital improvement that is significant, and that is a new high school. And that has not been included in any of the capital improvement planning that we've been doing, because we just don't know yet if we will be accepted into the MSBA's funding pool, and we have not heard any further kind of notification from them. So once we know from them, I think we can start to figure out how to plan and include the new high school in our planning, our capital planning. One other note is that both, or actually all three options are available in of the DPW facility. So those three different options that have been were laid out earlier tonight, those three options are all work within that capital improvement plan that we have. I'm not sure if it has actually been communicated to all of you. I know that some folks are looking for the packet that we had forwarded along, but we'll make sure that you all get that. And there's a listing of projects that are proposed, and included in that is, like I said, the new fire apparatus that will be coming up a little bit later tonight. So I want to make sure that the council understands that we're going to have a fuller, deeper conversation about all of the items on the capital improvement plan, but wanted to give the context that we are not doing this, we're not making these decisions like a fire apparatus being brought before you, request for a bond authorization for a fire apparatus without a full plan. I would hope that there may be further conversation in the Ways and Means Committee, but and I know that the folks who put the work in to put the capital plan together will be available in 2 weeks to address the council. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any councilors wishing to speak? Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you. Through you to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, I know we put a lot of projects in capital improvement plans, and we've been doing it for many, many moons, even before you went to high school. But I would hope that in that plan, there are many times that 11 of us up here put in projects that we would like to see done in our neighborhoods. And I would hope that during the year when we do those motions, that these plans and these projects are included in these plans, because there are many times they go into Never Never Land, and we never actually see them done. So I would hope that when we do put something on board to you, that we want this to happen.
Right.
We don't want to say, well, it's not that important. We'll put that on next year or the next year or next year, and then we become frustrated.
Yeah.
So I would hope that some of these projects that we voted on during the year are included in these capital improvement plans. Thank you.
Understood. And one thing that I'll note is that when you take a look at the project list that we have, you'll see that there are some items that are capital improvements that are not necessarily coming out of the general fund. For example, City Hall was mentioned. We got approval from the council to start using the insurance proceeds from the damage that was done by the tornado. That money, that capital improvement is listed, but it's listed as a kind of an off-budget issue. The point of having the capital plan is so that when items like a piece of apparatus from the fire department, which is a $1.6 million piece of apparatus, which is important to the operation of the fire department, when that comes up, that we have a plan for vehicles, that we have a plan for roadways, that we have a plan for our buildings, so that we're doing the necessary unsexy things, right? Like fixing the flashing on a school, or things that you may not know about, or other folks may not know about, but are small investments in a building or a piece of equipment. And in terms of, I think, requests as they come on, and I know that a lot of requests end up being roadways and sidewalks, and we have a line for kind of a blanket line for sidewalk and roadway improvement, that we want to make an additional investment on top of Chapter 90, so that the city's committing additional money to sidewalk and road repair. And I think within that, we can talk about maybe the priorities of folks on the council. And then if there are bigger issues like I know the senior center is one that has been talked about. That's actually in motion, and it's not on. You won't see it on that capital plan because we're working on getting it fixed now. So we didn't think that we needed to put it on there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, just one particular thing, and I think Councilor McKenna can also agree with this, is the public stairs that are in Ward 1 and in Ward 2. And they're all in deplorable condition. I have 3 sets. I believe Councilor has 2 sets, 4 sets. So, these are items that we've been trying to get for many, many years, and,
You'll be happy to know that there is a line for public stairs. And I think it may be roadway, sidewalks, and public stairs, but kind of a blanket, line, so we know that we need to dedicate a certain amount, and we can knock off a couple of reconstructions of public stairs as we go through, the next few years.
That's all we'd be looking for, is to make sure that we've been heard.
Right.
That's the main
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we have Chief Bright here and yourself, I would like to ask a question with regard to capital improvements. I think all of us here, including Chief Bright, would agree that the Alden Mills Fire Station building is in deplorable condition. And I think the roof on that building was just recently done, but was left undone for several years, causing water to seep down into the structure itself through the brickwork, and I think Chief Bright would also agree that there's considerable work that needs to be done if we are to keep Freeman Street operating. Now, we've seen in the past decade a brand new fire station up in Ward 6, a brand new facility that serves wards 1 and 2. And we've seen the area in Ward 5, the 2 stations there, just progressively get worse with regard to their condition. And I'd like to know tonight what, if any, plans are in the capital improvement project to bring those buildings up to code before we wind up having to tear the Alden Mills Fire Station down completely. So that's a question I'd like to know tonight. And I think the time has long overdue to get that station, or those stations both, in good repair and start using some of the growth from the projects down on the beach and Ocean Avenue, which are on the east side of the city, to get those stations operational, at least if not for the entire year, maybe during the peak periods, which would probably be from June 15 to Labor Day, and then again when we have the heavy inclement weather from December 15th up until the end of March. So if you can answer that question for me, I'd certainly appreciate it.
Absolutely, and I apologize because the details that we've laid out were emailed to the councilors, and we can make sure that you all get a hard copy of what's included, because it's a little bit of it's a preview. We will hope to have further conversation about each one of the items that are on that list. In response to the Alden Mills Fire Station, there is a line item there that we have for a plug of, I think, about $1 million to renovate. I am uncertain whether or not that building is going to be able to be salvaged. I know that the chief has had some serious concerns about it and looking at it, and even looking at it before, I think in advance of the election, to make sure that it was kind of safe and could be a place that people could be in. So I have I do have some reservations about what the long-term status of that building will be. We understand that there's a need there, and that's why we kind of plugged an amount for the time being. But we're gonna have to have a kind of a further look at that building to see whether or not it can be reconstructed, or if it may make more sense to do something else.
Well, I would hope so, Mr. Mayor, because with all of the new construction going on in the city, there is a growing urgency to get that station operational, if not full-time, at least during the peak periods when it's difficult for fire apparatus, particularly ladder trucks, to navigate the streets in this city, particularly when during the heavy traffic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. On that vein, perhaps, and I don't know if this is any thought put into this at this point, my understanding is the marina down on the riverside is coming into issue. That would not be a bad place for a future rescue facility where we could, because right now there is no, and correct me if I'm incorrect, Chief Bright, but there is no waterborne apparatus outside of a small Boston whaler. And my thought would be if we could engender the state police and perhaps in a joint effort to put a water rescue down there, that might be something worthwhile. I believe the state police's only water rescue is in Boston, and then thereafter the Coast Guard, I think, has an apparatus north of us, I think, in Marblehead, but I'm sure you can better elaborate.
Thank you, Council. No, you're correct. The state police have a boat at Black Falcon Pier, East Boston. Coast Guard are ways out when we call them. Takes them a little while to get here. So currently, our fleet, we had a whaler, but it has been decommissioned. It's gone now. So right now, we have a jet ski and a rubber raft. We just received through local, like USAR money, like an inflatable raft type of boat.
Zodiac.
Right? They call it a boat in a bag. So we haven't really we've been out training and starting with that now. But it would be ideal to have, something set up in the water. I was hoping at some point in time we could do something like that. We have many miles of coastline, and we get a lot of calls for water rescues. They've been increasing every year.
I mean, my thought is that, going on that vein and possibly engendering the state police into venturing into having both like up in Rose Quarry, a joint facility with the state police. I mean, because at this point we have literally well over 20 miles of coastal area that is not covered by anybody within, within a 20-mile radius. In the response time to get on the water is extremely long. God forbid you have to do a water rescue, even in a Zodiac, and I can tell you that that's not the best thing to do, a water rescue when you have high seas at 5 feet or even greater. In fact, you put your men in jeopardy at that point.
I would certainly be open to speaking with the state police about going forward on something like that. I think our department does a tremendous job of what we have, getting out there. Guys go above and beyond with the equipment we have to get out there and do the job. I was hoping with all the new projects going up down Revere Beach, it was my understanding that there was some provisions in the work with, if it was the environmental police and the state, to do a joint facility down there and put a new fire station with the environmental police down there. That never happened,
right?
Unfortunately. So now I think it's one increasing pressure, at least I feel, with our Engine 5 Freeman Street stations over 100 years old and needs a lot of work. We should be looking towards replacing that in the next few years. And as Councilor Powers has been a strong advocate for the Point of Pines Fire Station, my hopes was to try to maybe get some money in and try to give that building some TLC, but it might be beyond. I think we're going to get a report from the city engineer very soon that says that that's not going to happen.
And my thought was to engender that, to obviously buttress that off of a state project, because the dollars obviously much higher. And again, I'm just floating the idea, and that's all this is. my thought would be you'd be able to have a water-borne apparatus, you'd be able to obviously put in, whether you use a Quint truck or not, you could put something down there to actually deal with the medical aid within the area. You don't necessarily need a ladder truck for that area.
True.
Because looking at your numbers.
Be open to look at that. I mean, right now, I think we've gone backwards in the sense we have 4 engines and 2 trucks. We lost our 5th engine years back. I'd be looking to try to get that back.
Right.
Personally.
I'm not trying to tell you your business, you know yours, but.
Right now, that's
medical
a
aid-
very isolated area, as we know. Every year, the traffic situation gets worse. There's only 2 roads in and out of there. They're prone to flooding, severe weather, and, if engine 5 is out of service on another call, which happens quite frequently, it's a very busy fire engine.
Right.
It's a long ride.
Something to think about.
Yeah, Thank you.
Thank you,
Council.
sir.
Appreciate it.
Council Powers, did you have any further?
One more comment for the chief. If engine 5 is out of service, as would be occasionally engine 4, ladder 1, engine 1, covering the Point of Pines in Oak Island and Lower Revere Street, all that's left, and correct me if I'm wrong, is engine 3 up in North Revere and
right.
ladder 2 on Broadway.
That's right, or mutual aid from another city.
Which makes it our mutual aid. And I have come over that Jim Lever's Bridge. It's not frequently, but from time to time, that bridge is up. And if we're waiting for mutual aid to come from Lynn, we've got a serious problem down there, particularly when someone is having a stroke or a heart attack and needs medical right away.
You are correct, Counselor. Those are the things that keep me up
Those
at
are my
night.
concerns, and I
Yes.
know they're the concerns of the residents of Ward 5. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Guanasso.
I understand, Chief, that Engine 5 services portions of Ward 5 and portions of Ward 3. When Engine 5 comes out and traverses throughout the community, is that costly to the taxpayers?
Is it costly to the
Yes,
taxpayers?
yes.
I don't get the.
Is it very expensive when the fire apparatus is going up and down the side streets?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard estimates of cost, how many, for false
So
alarms,
does
every
it, in
time.
effect, does it cost the taxpayer every time an engine leaves the
Of course it
station?
does. Wear and tear on the apparatus, fuel.
So when we buy a new piece of apparatus, it's be cost-effective to the community?
I think it will. At some point in time, your apparatus, you're sinking more money into it to keep it running, and then there's a lot of downtime. Now you're working off, say, for instance, we're here tonight to speak about a ladder truck.
And when they leave the station, they're
Our
out...
spare ladder truck's 30 years old. So when
Right.
our frontline truck goes, we're operating with.
So the premise of the idea is when a fire apparatus leaves the station, it's out to do a service or a particular need?
Yeah, or one of our needs, training, familiarization,
Okay.
putting flags on the hydrant.
Thank you.
Certainly not campaigning, nothing like that.
Well, I was referring to that, what I was
That
saying.
did not happen, Counselor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other councils wishing to speak? So this is going to go to Ways and Means Subcommittee. All in favor?
Calendar item number 5, communication from the Board of Assessors relative to the FY18 minimum residential factor.
This is going to be ordered to a public hearing. All in favor? Any councils wishing to speak? Mr. Mayor?
This is simply the communication that allows for the public hearing to happen. So,
Ordered to a public hearing. All in favor?
Calendar item number 6, communication from the mayor relative to the adoption of eligibility factor for clause 41C.5 for residents age 65 and older.
This is actually going to come up on our next scheduled meeting, the 27th, correct? So we're going to ask to table that until the 27th. We'll be able to discuss with the city assessor then.
Calendar item number 7, communication from the Director of Finance requesting a loan order in the amount of $1.6 million for new fire apparatus.
Mr. Anzoni?
Yes, you've seen in my communication, in my letter attached to the loan order, you'll see that it states what is happening to the and the reason why we need a new ladder truck. The ladder truck cost is $1.6 million, and the chief is taking out of service a very old piece of equipment that they use for a spare and placing the ladder truck that presently is in service in that spare role. So with that, we're looking at a bond of $1.6 million, and if you have any questions, myself or the chief will gladly answer them.
Any councilors? Chief Bright? Any comments? Speaks for itself. I think we're all going to be...
Just very
Mr. Mayor?
quickly, as you'll all find out in the packet that was handed out on the capital improvement plan, this is part of that. And I just want to reiterate the fact that we do not, make these long-term debt obligations to the city in a vacuum, and that there is a plan that we are putting together and making sure that, for instance, with the fire department, that there's a fleet replacement and that we're doing it on an ongoing schedule. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the proactiveness on this. And this is going to also be ordered to a public hearing on the 27th. All in favor?
Calendar item number 8, communication from the Director of Finance relative to an additional appropriation for emergency communications in the amount of $34,200.
Yes, this is a operating cost in our budget. The city has gone out and seen how we can communicate with the citizens in cases of emergency, and if there were any better ways. However, we came down to the Code Red, which has been purchased, formerly known as Code Red, which has been purchased by another company. But it's the same system that we are using now. So we're looking for an appropriation for the $34,200 so that we can continue with the service to the community and to the constituents in the city.
Any councilors wishing to speak? Any questions? I do have one question. Is this just for one year, or is this for?
That's for 1 year. It's an operational.
So the $34,000. This is the Code Red, or the communications, the reverse calls to the homes.
Right. That's correct.
I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but doesn't that seem to be a lot to have just phone calls going out, or some sort of a one-call system in addition? Or is this being used for anything other than public service announcements?
It's being used for public service announcements.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to go to a roll call.
Yeah, the new company is the Emergency Communications Network, LLC.
Shall the City Council approve an additional appropriation in the amount of $34,200 to the IT Department Computer Contracted Services account? Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council Vice President Keith?
Yes.
Yes, the additional appropriation is approved.
Take your call.
Calendar item number 9, communication from the Director of Finance as it relates to an additional appropriation for FY18 in the amount of $430,600 to the Computer Contracted Services account.
What this amount is for the maintenance of the computer equipment in the city. We have an amount there. We had been reviewing other sources of income, revenue, that possibly may have been able to cover this. However, the funding sources that we looked at weren't capable of handling this amount. So what we're asking for is an additional appropriation from the City Council to go to the Computer Contractor Services so that we can pay the maintenance contract on all of the, for the city, all the computer equipment for the city, and including software.
Any councils? Council Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. George, what is this directly going for?
It's directly going for the maintenance of the computer services that we have, such as the hardware services and the software services that we have in the city.
Thank you.
Any other councils? I also have a similar question to the last account. You know, specifically, this is going to IT-related costs. This is above and beyond the budgeted amount earlier?
That is correct.
And was there any reason for the oversight or the missed?
No, it wasn't an oversight. What it was is, in the meantime, while we had the budget passed, we always can have an additional appropriation until we set the tax rate. We haven't set the tax rate. In realizing that, we tried to look for different revenue sources in order to cover it. But as it came out to fruition, it actually came that we needed for another appropriation, additional appropriation.
Okay, thank you for your explanation. Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, through you to George. Quick question. Who are we contracting with?
Pardon me?
Who are we contracting with?
We have a maintenance service company who does these on state contracted prices. It's called TOS, and they actually provide us the service during the year.
And so when I hear that we're contracting, what exactly do they do for us so we have a better understanding?
Well, what they do for us, they do a number of things. One is they maintain our equipment for us. They also maintain the various network needs that we have. Make sure that we have the appropriate amount of cybersecurity that needs to be in place. Those are basically the things that they do for us.
So when you're talking about taking care of the equipment, are you talking about updating the software? Are you talking about dealing with mainframes? Are you talking about cloud information?
Well, we don't have cloud. We
Okay.
don't have mainframes. We have, again, it's a PC lineup which we have service, and they maintain the service for us. One goes down, they fix it for us, and they come in and fix it for us. They also, any of the network software, they keep updated, which is very intricate, as you know. And especially in today's age, you know, the software that you need for cybersecurity is one that they provide us, and make sure that it's up to date in order to make certain that we're secure as we can be.
Thank you.
Any other councils? Roll call.
Shall the City Council approve an additional appropriation in the amount of $430,600 to the IT Department Computer Contracted Services account? Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito? Yes. Councilor Novoselsky? Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo? Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council Vice President Keefe?
Yes.
Yes, the appropriation has been approved.
Thank you, councils.
Calendar item number 10, communication from the city engineer requesting funding for construction material disposal. The mayor has requested that this communication be tabled until the meeting of the 27th. Calendar item number 12, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Richard Visquet as auditor, budget director.
I'm going to refer this to Councilor Guanasso.
That was taken up earlier this afternoon. The next two, Anthony Peroni also, I will read that when I do the report from the Appointment Subcommittee.
You can do that now, Councilor Guanasso.
The Vice President, the Appointment Subcommittee met earlier this afternoon, and we had three items before us. First was 17-238, Dan McGuire, School Committee Member, Special Municipal Employee Disclosure Form. In effect, what Mr. McGuire was looking for was to retain his position on the school committee and also accept a salary for the remainder of his term. The council saw in its wisdom to offer a substitute motion to retain his position on the Revere School Committee without pay. So we're looking for clarification from whoever it might be, whether it be the Ethics Commission or whoever has the redeeming power, that we would like that to be honored, that Mr. McGuire remain on the school committee without pay. And also we had before us a appointment of Richard Visquet as the auditor budget director. We met with Mr. Visquet earlier this afternoon, and the full membership of the council was there, and we all voted out favorably for this particular appointment. And the other appointment that was before us was the reappointment of Anthony Peroni to the Revere Housing Authority Board. And again, the board, the council was in full attendance at the appointment subcommittee, voting out favorably. So I ask, Mr. Vice President, the three indications be voted out favorably as submitted by the appointment subcommittee.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. So on the three appointments, we can take those up together, and then the separate one on the, on Mr. McGuire, we're going to take that up on a...
Two appointments, and in one separate one is a motion.
Mr. Vice President, point of information.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, sir. Through you, regarding item 14 and 15, we had two appointments of new people coming to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Right now, the Zoning Board of Appeals is basically shut down for the rest of the year. I don't know if it's something you want to push to get these two appointed now so they can have another meeting in December or late in this month, and the chairman's here. I don't know if he has a feeling on it.
Our next meeting is the 29th.
Well, Mr. Vice President, in all due respect, our next meeting will be November 27th. At that particular time, we can take up the particular two applicants. They can appear before the appointment subcommittee. We can vote them out that evening, and they can be ready and able to go on the 29th to serve the city.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So we'll take those up on the 27th. All in favor? So we're going to take up 17283. There was a council communications about Dan McGuire requesting a special municipal employee designation, but we have decided to offer a substitute motion where he would retain his position without pay through the year.
Absolutely.
So on the motion, all in favor? On the substitute motion, all in favor? Council Guanasso, we still have 17390 on the appointment of Mr. Viscay. And
Mr. Vice President, I read that the appointment of Mr. Viscay and Mr. Peroni were voted out favorably. I read that in my report.
all in favor? Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is the Billboard Ordinance Subcommittee report.
Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Earlier this evening, the City of Revere City Council's Subcommittee on Billboards met, and we had, I think I'll wait until it's quiet. All right, earlier this evening, the Revere City Council's Subcommittee on Billboards met to discuss our current billboard ordinance and looked at our first draft of what a future ordinance could look like. I want to thank our city solicitor as well as the city planner and Ron Champeau and Carol Haney for their diligent work in this committee. They put some great recommendations forward. We're going to be meeting again on December 4th to look at the second draft of this and hopefully have something set in stone by early next year.
Any councils? Thank you for the communication, and we'll be taking this up, as Council Janino mentioned, on the 4th will be the next meeting.
Is the Legislative Affairs Subcommittee report.
Councilor Zambuto?
Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, the Legislative Affairs Subcommittee met earlier this evening. We had two items on the agenda. One was on an ordinance relative to feeding wild animals, wildlife, and birds. It's more serious than it sounds, obviously. We've tweaked it quite a bit, and I think the thing we came out with, obviously we have a rodent problem in the city. Part of throwing food out for birds helps aggravate the rodent problem. One of the biggest things I think we need with this is education. We need to educate the public, especially the new people in the city. And so it's going to take quite a bit of an education process, and I think that before we start finding people, we need to get this education program put together. So this was voted out favorable from the committee, and so I guess it's up for a vote.
Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. This is going to be ordered on a second reading as amended. Voted on a third and final reading. And roll call for engrossment and ordainment.
Shall the City Council approve an ordinance relative to the feeding of wild animals, wildlife, and birds? Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo? Yes. And Council Vice President Keith?
Yes.
Yes, the ordinance is engrossed and ordained.
Okay, the other item on the agenda was an ordinance prohibiting non-medical marijuana establishments within the city of Revere. That was kept in committee for one more week. We will meet next week, and a couple of small details need to be worked out, and so that's in committee for one more week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. As for suspension of rules, we have Mr. Anzoni, who has a few late motions in regards to finance that he'd like to present. We have a pretty lengthy agenda, so I think that it would be nice to suspend the rules. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Anzoni?
We have a late communication from the Director of Finance relative to the Unit B Memorandum of Agreement for City Hall employees.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll start again. The city has reached a contract negotiations with the Unit B group at City Hall. It's for fiscal year 16, 17, and 18. The new increases will be 1% as of July 1st, 2015, 2% as of July 1st, 2016, and 3% as of July 1st, 2017, with a $500 payment on the third year. This is the contract that they accepted, the Unit B contract accepted, and what you'd be doing here is you'd be, in essence, changing the ordinance, the salary ordinance, by these amounts. So your vote will change the salary ordinance by these amounts. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any councilors? Okay, roll call. Oh, Councilor Powers.
Hey, George, I just have a question. There are some employees in the clerk's office, the mayor's office, et cetera,
Yes.
who, are they part of this or no?
No, well, they're not part of this particular one, but there's a parity ordinance that is next on the agenda.
Okay.
We'll put them part of this agreement. We'll put them part of the same agreement.
Okay,
agreement.
that answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? Roll call.
Shall the City Council approve the appropriation necessary to fund the Unit B contract? Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rotundo? Yes. Councilor Zambudo is absent. And Council Vice President Keith?
Yes.
Yes, the Unit B contract appropriation has been approved.
Thank you, councilors.
There's a late communication from the Director of Finance relative to the parity salary ordinance.
This is the ordinance that those people that do not, those employees who do not belong to any union that would normally belong in A and B units. This is the ordinance that changes and makes the agreement available to them. So what it does do, and this is something we pass every time there's a contract negotiated, what it does do, it allows those particular employees to receive the same agreement as B or A, whatever they receive in whatever unit they're in. It again changes the salary schedules which is an ordinance, change the salary ordinances for those employees, and it's something that is done every single time we sign a contract.
Thank you, George. Any councilors? So this is going to be ordered to a public hearing on November 27th. All in favor?
Thank you, councilors. Thank you. Shut this.
Rule 23, committee reports. Rule 23, committee reports. The following items are being reported out of various city council subcommittees with a recommendation to be placed on file. Calendar item number 19, communication from the mayor. This was a presentation of the Human Resources Report by the Collins Center.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 20 was a motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the city of Revere look into the feasibility of creating, with state, federal, and local grant money, a community boating center by reconfiguring Gibson Park to accommodate such facility.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 21, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the city of Revere look into the feasibility of creating with the DCR through state grants and funding to create walking trails and kayak canoe launch at the Seaplane Basin Trail.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 22, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the City Council look into the feasibility of changing the city charter to vest the powers of the Board of Health within the City Council itself, or change the charter to make the Board of Health an elected position.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 23, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the City Council draft an ordinance that any board within city government must have all meetings televised as permitted by law, held at night after 6 p.m. to engage the public.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 24, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that a certificate of merit be presented to Wayne Rose for his efforts in preventing gang and gun violence in our community. Additionally, for his work with the Revere Police and our children in making Revere a safer place.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 25, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the city of Revere have a 3-month moratorium on large-scale residential construction.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 26, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the current residential zoning be changed so that new construction of properties proposing 20 or more units be required to have 2 parking spaces.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 27, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the city amend the zoning ordinances to mandate a minimum of 25% of all units built in Revere be affordable housing, whether these units are affordable rentals or for purchase.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 28, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the city council go on record against any effort to make Massachusetts a sanctuary state.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 29, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the city solicitor, chief of police, and members of the gang unit meet to discuss classification within the gang book and criteria to be considered a gang member.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 30, motion presented by Councilors Morabito and McKenna that the mayor request the License Commission to ban fiesta shows from obtaining a license or permit to host a carnival at the Showcase Cinemas due to the consistent violence that has occurred there this past week and years prior.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 31, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the city of Revere investigate how 63 Vane Street obtained a curb cut.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 32, motion presented by Councilor Patch that the mayor be requested to write to the state delegation requesting an update on the Route 1 Highway Improvement Project.
Placed on file.
Calendar item number 33, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor update the city council on any reports relative to core sampling at the DPW.
Place on file.
Excuse me. Calendar item number 34, communication from the mayor regarding the city employee residency policy and residency waivers. Calendar item number 35, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor update the city council on accreditation issues at Revere High School. Calendar item number 36, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Tufts Construction as a licensed strand layer. Calendar item number 37, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor request the state auditor to audit outside legal work, including billable hours and scope of work from 2016 to present. Calendar item number 38, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor request the chief of police, fire chief, and owners of Dunkin' Donuts to appear before the city council to discuss ways to lessen overdoses. Calendar item number 39, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the city council adopt an ordinance to regulate the use and registration of drones. Calendar item number 40, motion presented by Councilors Giannino and McKenna, that the city council draft and approve an ordinance promoting all public parks as drug, alcohol, tobacco, and weapon-free zones.
Councilor Gino?
Thank you. This is something I wish to keep in committee. I know that it probably won't be addressed by the end of the year, but I hope that we can get it done next year, because it's something that Councilor McKenna and I have been working on for quite some time now.
Okay, we're going to request that this goes back into Parks and Recreation.
Mr. President, are you going to resubmit this next year, or so we can kill it now? I don't know, we're not going to act on it anyway.
Yeah, unless there's any intention of having a meeting before next year.
I have no problem. Parks and Recreation appointments, would anyone be hosting a meeting? Ms. Council McKenna? Would you like to take this up before our next meeting, or one of the meetings in December?
So, in the interest of time, we can place it on file, but I will be submitting this for the next meeting for the first of the year.
Okay, placed on file.
Calendar item number 41, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the city of Revere conduct a residential moratorium of large-scale residential construction. Calendar item number 42, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the city council form a land use subcommittee. On to motions. Calendar item number 43, motion presented by Councilor McKenna, that the mayor request MassDOT to install a no turn on red sign at the corner of Winthrop Avenue for traffic entering onto Bennington Street at the Beachmont train station to protect pedestrians crossing the street at Dunkin' Donuts. When pedestrians are crossing, vehicles are making that blind turn on a red light. It is a very dangerous situation that needs immediate attention.
Councilor McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So I was holding signs, and this has been an issue before. I was holding signs for my campaign, but these poor people crossing Donley Square from Dunkin' Donuts all the way down to the park, there's no sign that says, no turn on red. So they're crossing, and the sidewalk's a little bit around the corner. So these people that are turning on the red light, they can't see them. These people are running across the street. So I'm asking for, I think this is the second time I've asked for this, but I'm asking for a sign on the corner of Winthrop Ave and Bennington Street that says no turn on red.
Any councilors? Motion to approve?
Calendar item number 44, motion presented by Councilor McKenna, that the mayor request MassDOT and the appropriate city agencies to work together to fix the major problems at Tomasello Drive and Winthrop Avenue by installing lane markers on the pavement for traffic turning onto Revere Beach Parkway. A stop sign at the corner of Tomasello Drive and Winthrop Ave should be installed to allow pedestrians to cross this intersection. Additionally, multiple right-turn lane-only pavement markers should be installed, starting at the police station and ending at Tomasello Drive for traffic on Revere Beach Parkway, turning onto Tomasello Drive to prevent vehicles using this lane from driving directly into Beachmont.
Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So I talked to Chief Guido today, and we came up with the plan, and I know that Councilor Novoselsky has worked on this too. But first of all, we need skip lines going from Tomasello Drive onto Revere Beach Parkway, right in that middle where people are taking the left turn to go on either to Shirley Ave or, heading towards Broadway. We need skip lines, just to show people that they need to stay in their lane. There's nothing there to guide them. I know there's been multiple accidents because people just go in other people's lanes. There's 3 lanes that come out of Tomasello Drive. 2 of them go into Shirley Ave and onto Revere Beach Parkway. 1 goes to Beachmont. Where that lane is, that needs a stop sign because people just jet out and people are going straight. They're not obeying that left turn, right turn only sign. So they're going straight, and there's going to be an accident there. What Chief Guido suggested is that he doesn't want the traffic to end up in front of the police station because he feels that if there's an emergency, the apparatuses won't be able to get out. So what he suggested was to put turn only into either Stop and Shop or the shopping area. So I agree with that. Put signage on the road. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Good motion. Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Councilor McKenna, for enhancing my efforts to try and clear up this intersection. It is a very, very bad intersection. I know in the last 5 months, there's been at least 6 accidents there. A dear friend of us, as Morris was T-boned there, and Carol Ty also, and I know several others too, but those 2 specifically, and there's a very, very dangerous intersection. It's a state police controlled area, and as a matter of fact, I had a cruiser down there the other night, and they got 10 people going through the red lights and not taking that right-hand turn. So I thank the state police for their efforts and let people know that, we don't want them to cause accidents and hurt people. So thank you, Councilor.
Great motion. Motion to approve?
Calendar item number 45, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor request the election commissioner to hold the written application for absentee ballots for 2 years longer than the current retention of such record is required by law.
Councilor Rotundo?
Speaks for itself.
All in favor? Any other? All in favor?
Calendar item number 46, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor appear before the city council to discuss question 1 in detail.
Councilor Rotundo?
Speaks for itself.
Motion to approve.
Calendar item number 47, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the city of Revere ask the surrounding communities to join in a class action lawsuit against the drug companies that make OxyContin for not properly disclosing the highly addictive nature of the drug. I want to acknowledge and thank Allison Spark-Nagy for educating me on this issue.
Councilor Rotundo?
Thank you. After speaking both to the mayor and city solicitor, and I'm sure several of you probably have received an email accordingly, we're going to actually join in this class action suit. And what is hoped to gain from this is to recoup the funding that we've spent on education, treatment, as well as through EMS and other venues. If we do this right, I suspect we're probably going to be able to recoup millions of dollars and help treat the people of our community for such a horrific tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other councilors? Councilor Powers?
Mr. President. I want to commend Councilor Rotundo. I think this is an excellent motion. There are so many families, not only in the city of Revere, but throughout the area, that have been impacted negatively by the distribution of these drugs. It's just mind-boggling to think that this has been allowed to exist for this length of period, that the pharmacies and the doctors that write this script have not been monitored more closely. It's sinful. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. And I also would like to commend Councilor Rotundo bringing this to light. We have gotten some confirmation that I believe the city is already acting on this. What we've seen over the last 20, 25 plus years, the gross negligence from pharmaceutical companies and doctors alike in the subscription of these medicines, and what it's caused and the heartaches it's caused is really troubling. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. Councilor Rotundo.
I got to kind of walk back the slippery slope that we were talking about just now. Doctors and pharmacists are not at blame here. You have to understand that the pharmacies distribute and the doctors obviously write the scripts, but it's the research that's provided to the doctors that is flawed, that has given them the false impression of the addictive nature of this drug. I don't want to just put this on their heads because, to be quite honest with you, it is clearly evidence-based that the big pharma is to blame here, not the doctors. Thank you.
Well, if I misspoke, it was pharmaceutical companies, and of course there are some negligent physicians out there as well. But I understand completely it's not all of them. It's a very small minority. And motion to approve.
Calendar item number 48, motion presented by Councilor Rotundo, that the mayor request the library to place book boxes at 250 Broadway, Rose Street, Broadway, and Coolidge Street, and any additional locations.
Councilor Rotundo.
Speaks for itself.
Mr. President.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Just through you, Councilor Rotundo, what are these library book boxes? I didn't know if he's talking, I think I was talking to Councilor Rotundo.
Councilor Rotundo, can you give us some detail?
I think former teacher and Council McKenna spoke correctly when she said there is one on Shirley Avenue, and I believe that it would be of great utility to reach the children in the various areas that are underserved in our community, and I think it would be something that would be worthwhile. It's a very low expenditure, and I think it's something that we could accommodate.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Vice President. Just so everybody knows, there's one on Shirley Ave and also one at Sandler Square, which were placed there by private people, not the city of Revere. So, and it is not only for children, it's also for adults, and it's a chance for people to swap books. When you're through with a book, you go over there. If you want to take a book, you take a book, but you replace it with another book, so other people can get a chance in reading instead of having to go up to the library. So I know if the city does it, it's going to be an expenditure to them, so they have to put it in the budget. But I want to thank the Janjar family on Campbell Ave for actually installing these two. It was built by Rashid himself, and they started the books, and it's been a great program down there in Shirley Ave, and I thank them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McKenna.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice President. I think I want to just acknowledge the Beachmont Improvement Committee, too. They've also started this. I don't know if they've done anything with it, but I know the idea is up there, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor, for that information. Councilor Rotundo, anything further?
Thank you. And Councilor Novoselsky is 100% correct in acknowledging those families for doing the right thing. Unfortunately, there are parts of the community that don't have that type of representation, and I feel it's incumbent upon us as a community when you see something that's working, to step up and move forward with that idea. And I think that would be good for the children in those parts of the community I had noted. So that said, it would be a small expenditure, and I think that's something that we can accommodate. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Great idea. And if I can help with some of my unused books or old books, I'd love to do that because we have a plethora of them in our basement. Motion to approve.
Late motion presented by Councilor Rotundo that the mayor request the developers of Suffolk Downs to appear before the City Council monthly to update the community on the progress of their project. Further, that the mayor hold a neighborhood meeting regarding this project due to its impact and benefits.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you. Frankly, looking at the 218-page submittal to Amazon that I read recently from him, this project is a huge, huge undertaking. It has very different facets. More importantly, it denotes 10,000 units for this project in the entirety of it, in which, when you look at the actual schematic, it gives you two possible answers for what could be in Revere and not. So that said, this is a very big project. It's going to take a long period of time. Instead of having the developers meet with councilors individually, that I would like them to come up here and speak to the people who are going to be greatly impacted by it. Not just down in Beachmont, not just down in the Shirley Ave area, but the entire city is going to be impacted by this. This is going to be putting a city inside of a city. And granted, part of it is in East Boston, but remember, they impact us just as much as we impact them. So this is a project that the city needs to get behind. It's a project that the city really has to do a lot of educating, and people need to understand what we're going to be getting involved with. To put it on a lesser note, if you take a look at the project up at Rose Quarry, this is going to dwarf that. This is going to be far greater than what that project is. And if you drive up to Rose Quarry right now, that is in itself a little bit of a city within a city, to the point that the developer at one time wanted to make that a district improvement zone. So this is probably going to be along 2 to 3 times bigger than that project. And based upon its financial outlook, it's going to outstrip it by $6 billion. At least that's what it stated the possibilities were. So with that said, I look forward to embracing this idea, but more importantly, I think it's something that we have to educate the people about so that they have a better understanding of what we're getting into. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I've sat with the developers just recently, and they said that they were going to sit with the community. They were going to start with the Beachmont area first, and then they were going to rent the Revere High School so they could have a public meeting with every single resident in Revere. So they are starting that planning. So if you want to wait for that, or you want them to come up, I mean, we could do both.
Personally, I think both would be the answer, because you segregate at that point. You only get people that can make the meeting because of work issues or whatever issue it is. Whereas if we have the meeting here, buttressing those meetings, it gives the people, you know, the understanding of what's going to take place. This is a life-changing event. This is something that is going to change the very fabric of our community, period. And anybody who thinks any differently is not looking to the past that we have engendered up at Rose Quarry, and that's to a very much smaller degree. So again, I honestly feel that it would be a benefit to have people up here. That way people can review it back on YouTube. They can kind of digest it a little bit better. More importantly, if they have questions, they have the ability to come up here knowing that every Monday night they'll be able to do that. And more importantly, it gives the developers a greater exposure and gives them the ability to have greater community input.
Thank you, Council. I agree. Motion to approve. And Councilor Janino?
Thank you. I have a late motion that my apologies, it is of an emergency nature, but I forgot to send the email to the clerk on behalf of myself and Councilor Patch. Recently, over the past week, there have been several car accidents at the intersection at St. Mary's. And the issue, well, one of many issues there, is that the stop sign is in one place, but people are stopping at the intersection before it, and then inching up and hitting other cars. So I want to make a motion on behalf of myself and Councilor Patch that the DPW immediately put stop lines at each of the stop signs. And hopefully we can look at some other options for the future, because that's not going to help it. Standing there over the past couple weeks, I've seen 2 or 3 accidents, and that's just over a couple hours. So it's a really bad intersection, and people don't look. So if the stop lines at least can make them aware of where to stop, I think that'll start to address the problem. Thank
Good
you.
idea. Council Patch.
Thank you. Real quick, Mr. Vice President. Yes, especially watching it on election night, you really notice they stop at the pedestrian crosswalk, which is like 30 feet away from the actual where you take the left-hand turn. And we actually had an accident that night. So there is an emergency. This is an emergency situation. Excuse me. And hopefully we can get that done soon. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Councilor.
just to clarify, I'd like it to be at all 4 stop signs at that intersection.
Thank you for the clarification. Motion to approve. All in favor? That closes out our meeting. Our next scheduled meeting will be Monday, November 27th. Have a great night. And actually, have a great Thanksgiving, Revere.